Hey, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Ready Steady podcast. There are two special things happening in this episode. Number one, it's out of sequence, it's out of time. We finished season one, and we are going to do this special episode to talk a bit about the games we played at Essen. And this is also a special episode because it is dedicated to a friend of the show who sadly passed away last year, and we will miss him greatly. Often guesting on our Oathsworn live streams is Skimble the cat, and forever remembered as a friend of the show and on our live streams and in the hearts of those who knew him. Now to the board game news and the things that we have taken our interest. This is not as in-depth as the news articles written by Barry, because Barry is still on holidays. But I have got here some of the stuff that's caught my attention that I'm happy to bring to you. But first, I shall bring in my co-host of the show today. No, it's not Oscar who's here with me here. It is, in fact, Chris. Welcome, Chris, back to the show.
Hello.
I have to start off with a correction. So we're going to follow the normal format of the show, even though this is a special, which is to say corrections if there are any, then the news that's piqued my interest, some quick plays if we have any updates for games we've talked about before, if we've played again, discovered something new or something we want to talk about, we'll do that. And then it's going to be the playeds, where we're going to get into some of the stuff that we picked up at Essen that we've been playing. We've each picked 3 games to discuss over there that we're interested in sharing. But first off, the correction. I think I said in the last episode that CMON has basically sold off everything, and I said that they still own Zombicide, which is not true. They've sold off most of Zombicide to Asmodee. They still own Marvel Zombies and the Deceased spin-offs. There's something about the licensing that's prevented them from moving those on to Asmodee, but they have actually sold off a lot of their Zombicide as well. We have seen them continue to deliver on their outstanding projects, though. They are tracking those on their website, so they've not collapsed, they've not gone under, but they have also sold almost everything in their catalog that they're not currently fulfilling. So we will see what happens with CMON moving forward. The news. It's Leviathan Wilds coming back to Kickstarter in spring 2026 with a new expansion. Did you play it, Chris?
No, I haven't played.
This is a cooperative game about jumping around on giant leviathans and curing them of the crystals that have corrupted them. Barry and I gave it a rave review. We really, really enjoyed it. It has had one expansion so far, which I've forgotten the name of, but now it will have a second expansion called the Shattered Peak, which introduces a teleporting die that moves around the monster. That's probably the most significant mechanical change that they've announced. And people who've played Leviathan Wilds will be like, oh no, that sounds very difficult. And it probably will. They've said it adds a new layer of challenge. There will also be 11 new Leviathans in the box. I don't know if there's going to be a new hero, though. They haven't announced that if there is. But this could be a good opportunity to pick up a copy of the game. I know it's quite hard to find at retail. It is from a publishing company who are called Mooncrab Games, and they are specifically formed just to publish this game via crowdfunding at the moment. So not a lot of wide retail release. The best place to get it is probably through these crowdfunding campaigns, which are typically on GameFound. We've got a whole bunch of crowdfunding campaigns, including Brass Pittsburgh, which we've talked about on the show a little bit. So I don't have many updates about these. I'm just highlighting the crowdfunding campaigns that came to our attention, which we have mentioned before. We've got the Danes as well. We've mentioned that. That's the follow-up from Uwe Rosenberg to Feast for Odin, but we don't know much more about it. I checked to see if there was an update. There is not one. So why am I mentioning it in the news? I'm not sure. Tigris and Euphrates reprint, we haven't discussed. This was announced while we were on break, or shortly before possibly, but we didn't get to cover it on the episode. So this is going to be 25th Century Games, who notably did the Ra, the big fancy Ra reprint. So you can sort of you know what to expect from them. It's probably going to have a fancy, I don't think they're introducing many or any new mechanisms that I'm aware of, but they will probably have like wooden tiles or something, fancy like that, if you want to get a super fancy version. But I'm sure there will be a retail compatible version as well, as they did with Ra.
I do have an interesting fact. Did you know that Tigris and Euphrates was actually a re-implementation of another game?
I did not.
This is genuinely true. Do you know what that game was called? Euphrates and Tigris. It's genuinely true.
So is this an earlier Knizia that he's?
Yeah, yeah. It's also I guess you could think of it as a first and second edition almost. I don't know how different they
At some
are,
point,
but it just
at
amused
some
me.
point, the publisher was like, actually, Tigris and Euphrates sounds better than Euphrates and Tigris.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've got our sort of, we just talked about our triptych of Knizia tile laying games, which of course includes the original Tigris and Euphrates and Samurai. Crowdfunded reprint as Hanami, and it's going to be much friendlier than Samurais in feudal Japan. But we've got the sort of spiritual successor to Tigris and Euphrates, which was Yellow and Yancy, which was then reprinted as Huang. And I've got both, and I probably don't need both. I definitely don't need both. They're the same game. But they don't. They don't hit right. Tigris and Euphrates hits right. It's slightly heavier. It's got slightly more convoluted combat rules. I don't know why it should be better, but it hits right for me. And Tigris and Euphrates hasn't been reprinted, as far as I'm aware, since the FFG reprint, which I think was in 2008. So it's been out of print for a little while. So it's nice to see it coming back to crowdfunding with a new edition that people can access. I think it's great. It's one of the sort of the classics that I'm happy to bring out at pretty much any time. It is a little bit of a bear to teach for people that don't know it. It's not necessarily got really good heuristics on when to engage in the conflicts. So you can get some idea about how to win, and you've got a limited hand of tiles. So, you've got some idea about what you might want to play into. It's, again, got the same scoring mechanism as Yellow and Yangtze, where you're trying to collect all the different colors because you're only going to score your lowest one. And if you collect no yellows, you've got nothing. Yellow is an example. I think that's actually wild, so it's not a good example. If you collect no greens, you've got nothing. But there's this one has the same similar style of wars and conflicts breaking out and challenges and things when you place the commanders down. But it just, I don't know if it's the squares, I don't know if it's the board, but something about this one has just always sort of felt like it's just slightly meatier and slightly more strategic. So I'm really excited this is coming back and people have a chance to pick up a copy or try it again. I myself might end up picking the fancier reprint just because I like the game so much. Having said that, I don't know if I like Huang reprint necessarily better than the Yellow and Yangtze production. So am I a fool who's just been burned already? We'll see.
It could possibly be the thematic implementation might have just worked better with the original. I think it's an underestimated aspect sometimes in reprints. I mean, nobody likes the archaeology inspired themed reprint of Ethnos.
Yeah, Archaeos has not done. So I haven't played it, so I can't really. It's not called that. I can't remember what it's called. It's got a funny name that sounds like archaeology, but it's not. But I've not played it, so I can't necessarily compare the mechanical differences. But
Archaeos
Society. But I know it's got a few little differences as well. The jury was sort of out. Some people preferred them, some people didn't. It was nice that people could access it again, but clearly it didn't do gangbusters because the Ethnos second edition came like immediately afterwards, which is pretty wild. But we've also got coming to crowdfunding Gods and Mortals, which is something I'm very excited about. I had a chance to look at this at Essen. I talked a bit about it, I think, on a previous podcast. This is the new game from Artyom Nichipurov, and this is the one where it's sort of an area control game, figures on spaces on a map, but you are the gods and you're not married to any one set of figures. They're just having their own war that you're influencing. And while they're having their own wars, you're buying and selling stocks in the different factions. So you want to buy while the faction's doing bad and then influence the war so they're doing well and then sell off all your stocks before they start doing bad again. I really like the idea. It looks really fun. It's supposed to be about 2 hours long. It's currently on coming to crowdfunding, but there's currently I believe it's Tabletopia version available. It could be Tabletop Simulator, but I think it's Tabletopia. I do know that Wolf Designer, Artyom's company, usually uses Tabletopia, so I'm keen to get a play of this in. So I'll try to get a play of it in so I can talk about it more on the next podcast when we return, but excited for that. I've so far loved all three of Artyom's games that I've got. And finally, it's the new game from Fantasia, who have known for their lavish productions. That is, of course, Endless Winter, The Paleo Americans, and Unconscious Mind, which, if you've ever seen them on the table, are absolutely gorgeous, incredible productions. And they have set their hand to some reprints, including a recent reprint of Colosseum, and now a reprint of Rurik, Dawn of Kiev, which is a sort of older, it's not worker placement, it's like sort of action selection bidding type system. It is by Stan Kodonsky, who did do Endless Winter, Paleo Americans with them. And I don't know if there will be new gameplay content. I have the original Kickstarter. Actually, I have the original and the expansion from the original Kickstarters for Rurik. I will try to table them again before this hits crowdfunding so I can talk about it in a little bit more detail, because I've explored the base game. I like it. I like the system. I feel like it wanted a bit more, so I'm keen to check out the expansions, but they've largely been sat there unexplored because they were out of print and hard to find. So now that I know it's going to be available to you guys again, I will try to get it to the table so I can talk a bit more about it. But I suspect that if it is a game you're interested in, then Fantasia have, one, always delivered, which is great, and two, made incredible productions. So let's try to get it to the table, talk a bit more about it mechanically. Did you ever play Rurik?
No, I remember. You never put it on the channel,
No,
no?
I didn't cover it on the channel.
I do remember. Maybe I looked into. I remember it coming out. And I remember looking into it, but I don't think I ever played it even. But the second edition looks very nice, I must say. It says it's going to on the BG page. It says that it's going to stay true to the original. It's going to refine and expand upon the original design, keeping the signature auction programming system.
Yep.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be much of a departure. I have followed the GameFound page because it looks nice.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing you would probably like. It looks like Factions on a Map game. It is not at all that. It's very much a sort of action management game where you're sort of managing this economy, and what you've got are these workers of different values that you're bidding on. Basically the actions are being auctioned off and you're bidding on them with your workers who have different values. And I'm afraid I haven't played it recently enough to get into any more detail than that, but I will play it again. And then maybe I can even cover some of the differences in the second edition if I get it to the table. But it is very Euro. It looks like it's not, but it is. Mm-hmm. But that's it for the news. We'll keep it brief this time, and we'll get into the games we've been playing. And actually, before we get into the quick fire round, I'm going to surprise you with a little section I forgot I was going to mention. Do you remember How Dare You?
Yes. Is that the one that our friend Rob got?
No, this is the one that's The Price is Right, but with facts. And we picked it up for the Essen meet and play.
Oh, with the squirrel.
No, that's a question.
That's a
this
question.
Is the one that had the sort of the funny little cartoony characters on the front, and each card was 6 questions.
Oh, this isn't from this year. That's from a couple years ago,
I think it's from
right?
3 years ago. We picked it up for the Essen meet and play.
Yeah. Yes, I do remember.
And each card has these 6 questions on them, each with a numerical answer. And you will read out one of the questions. The answers are on the back of the card. Without looking, you'll read out one, and then you must make a guess as to what you think the answer is. So it might be something like, how many stories tall is the Statue of Liberty or something, the Eiffel Tower.
Yep.
And then you'll have to say, I don't know, 17 stories. How tall is one story? I don't know. You're trying to work it out. And then the next person will either have to raise you or call you and say, how dare you? That can't be right. And so long as you're equal to or lower than, you give the card to the other player. But if you are over, then you keep the card. And there's a number of geese on the cards, and those are bad points. You don't have the most geese.
It's basically liar's dice, but with facts.
Yeah. And basically liar's dice with facts. And it's like cockroach poker. Again, it's a game that really just has one loser. But also you quite quickly stop caring about that, and you just care about the fun sort of facts game. But I brought it out to the board game group Christmas party really recently, and it sort of took off. And the whole group was sat there, and then they were all trying to buy it because We were having such a nice time with it. And it's one of those games that I always carry around because it's a tiny little box, it's easy to carry, and it's very easy to teach. And then it's just fun and people get into it. And I've played it a whole bunch and I've not yet seen all the questions. And even if I have, I can't remember any of the answers. I'm like vaguely remember that 60% of Americans get divorced, something like that. But there are also facts now from 2003. So you have to try to remember what was the world like 2 years ago. But it's by Alien by Dr. O, who is a publisher. You're actually going to talk about one of their games in a bit, Tax the Rich. They also did Recall. They're a Swedish publisher, design house, and I didn't know that they were the publisher behind this. I thought it was maybe an independent publisher or something because nobody could buy it. That was kind of the point. I brought it out for the Christmas party, and it's wildly out of print for some reason. Because it's just a deck of cards. It must be the cheapest thing in the world to print. And it's a really fun little party game. It's really good for sort of family gatherings. Nobody needs to learn any rules, which is great. So it's perfect. It's a perfect fit for those moments where you're down the pub or with a family, with a group of really diverse people who are not hobby gamers. This is definitely something you can always easily get to the table. So I was thinking around this time of year, this is a really strong recommend. But nobody can buy it. So this is my shout out to whoever has the rights to How Dare You. Just reprint it. It's so small. It's dead ass cheap. It's got to be super cheap to do. Just reprint it or update the facts a bit. It's 2 years out of date now. Put some new facts in. How many people stormed the Capitol on January 6th? I don't know.
Keep it light.
It's not. Some of the facts are not very light. Maybe that's why it didn't sell. You can have a family-friendly version. There's loads of ideas.
I was about to say you could. That's
How
fixable.
Dare You After Dark? We could have lots of fun versions. But I was really surprised to discover that for such a small box of cards, it's out of print. And it's
very franchisable. You could have How Dare You Marvel Edition, all the things that Codenames does
exactly
that, right? I mean,
you could any IP. How Dare You Star Wars?
Yeah.
Any
IP with sufficient lore, right?
How Dare You Lord of the Rings? How many people were in the Fellowship?
How many elves were there?
What is the average age of an elf in the Fourth Age?
Oh God.
But
technically, all elves are immortal, even if their physical bodies have died. So they are all. It's much higher than me.
So
I don't know why I'm making fun of me. I was literally I was king of the nerds. I won the quiz when we did it on the tour. So I'm basically making fun of me with that voice.
And quite an accurate Chris impersonation it was. So,
Yeah.
So anyway, that I just wanted to get into that before we get into the quick played, because I don't have a section called "You should reprint this," but maybe I should.
Yeah, maybe you should.
But anyway, that's because I don't have a lot of good light recommends. I could do Flip 7. That's been my other go-to, but everyone's already buying it.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't really need the publicity. I did play Flip 7 with my in-laws who don't speak English recently, and it worked very well.
Yeah, it's super easy to table. It's another one that's just really universal. All you do, you don't have to explain any rules really. You just go, here's the deck of cards. You're trying not to get the same ones. When you get lots of them, it's bad. You don't want to flip a card.
7 is good.
7s. So yeah, if you can get all 7 numbers, that's good, but it won't happen. But we live in hope. We dream. Anyway, so that's my holiday recommends. Flip 7 and a game you can't buy. Sorry, it's not better. Well, Duel for Cardia. If you're only going to play 2 players, Duel for Cardia has been a solid recommendation.
I got Duel for Cardia for my birthday.
Yeah. And
I asked.
Have you played it?
And I got it. No, I got it. I said I got it for my birthday. I got it 2 days ago for my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday! You're gonna love it when you get it to the table.
I will crack that out tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow. I'll hopefully get that out tomorrow. But yeah.
Yeah.
Another random game I did play actually is a game called Kokeshi. Have you played Kokeshi?
No, I don't think so.
It's a very, very good game. I really enjoyed it. That's my holiday recommendation. It came out last year, but a friend of mine brought that to a session. It's about Japanese doll making. It's incredibly good fun. Really, really enjoyed it.
This is something people could play with their families at the holidays?
Yes. I mean, it's a good family weight game. But I wasn't recommending it specifically for Christmas. I was just taking the opportunity to mention it because I really liked it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think.
But it is a family weight game.
I do think your family are definitely more compatible with hobby
That's true.
games than mine.
That's
Flip
probably true.
7 is like heavy for my family, right? Like if I can get Flip 7 to the
Oh right,
like
okay,
flip
wow.
like I know. I need
No,
really light
forget it then.
accessible games. Um
Forget it in that case.
but
Forget
it
it.
does look nice. So yeah, definitely have a look at that one as well, folks, especially if you like the Japanese theme. All right, but let's get into our quick plays, which kicks off with well, they're pretty much all games that Chris has brought back out, but I've played some of them, and I'll comment where appropriate. But I'll pass over to you for your first one.
Okay, so yeah, so Pinched is the first one I have. Pinched is a board game by Jonathan Gilmore Long and David Gordon, with art by Max Kozek and Kate Redisuk. Apologies for the poor pronunciation. Published by Mighty Boards. We checked this out at Essen at the novelty show. I think we had a little video on it there and then, where we were given a little breakdown of it. We managed to play it at Essen. And I've played it again since with one of my regular groups. If I remember correctly, Mike wasn't super enamored with it,
Yes, I think my sort of
but
takeaway was I don't regret my time here, but I don't need to play this again.
yeah. And my predictions essentially came true. I don't know if you remember, I said I think my regular group, who we play from very light to I wouldn't say very heavy with that group, very light to fairly heavy, and I knew they would eat it up, and indeed they did. So I remember when we played at three, it felt very light and not really very competitive. Frankly, it kind of felt like it was a little bit on rails a little bit in terms of, it was very, the plays were pretty obvious. It's very obvious what people would want to go for. It was there. It was. I think it was very rare anybody got a house a mansion by themselves. Because Pinch essentially is, you're all playing as burglars. There is one master burglar who is trying to who essentially in the blind bidding system, their bid chooses where the heist is going to go down, and I guess they have all the equipment with them because only that house is going to get burgled. If the other burglars go off to the other houses, then tough
Yeah,
luck.
it's
They don't
is
get
it
to
is
break
it
into
four
that house.
mansions or three mansions?
Yes, it's four. It's three mansions plus
Bank.
a. No, it's
Four
four. It's four.
mansions
It's
and the
four, I think,
bank?
because no, I think the bank is the fourth
Hmm.
one, but I don't think you have to. You don't have to play with the bank if I remember
So you could just
correctly.
play with three
So you
mansions.
can play with four. You can play with four
Yeah, because at
actual
its sort
mansions.
of core, it's a set collecting game where you're trying to collect valuables from these rich people's houses. And round to round, you take turns being the leader, and the leader has to pick what is functionally an offering of for the set collection game. And everyone has to try to predict what the leader's going to pick. And there's a few. The mansions all have little powers that you can gain if you raid that house. But if you can go by yourself, then you get all the rewards. But if people join you, you have to split the offerings. So this is 100% a game of, will they go to the obvious pick that I think they'll go to, or will they try to double bluff and not do that because they want to keep it all for themselves and deny sharing with their competitors?
And that simplistic breakdown of how that bidding and bluffing system works is completely accurate. And yet, when I played it with when we had our four-player game, I found everyone's buy-in was just a little bit higher. Into the theme maybe, but also into the mechanisms. And we were really trying to work out what the others wanted, where they would go, trying to trick, trying to double bluff. We were verbalizing a lot at the time what we were going to do, and obviously a lot of it was rubbish, and sometimes there was just a lot more, I guess, with kind of, it's very bluffing is obviously a very social mechanism, and with social mechanisms, I guess there's a lot that comes down to the players themselves. So even a very simple bluffing mechanism can be quite engaging if played with the right group. And obviously, I'm not. We weren't. Rob, and I weren't the wrong group. But I guess it was just a very different setting. We were very, very tired from. I think we'd already been at Essen for 2 or 3 days by the time we played that. Um, we were getting through a lot of games, and I think yeah, it just had a different vibe. I mean, we all enjoyed it, but I think we engaged with it much more on like a mechanical level,
Mm-hmm.
whereas when the game I played subsequently, we engaged much more whimsically with
Yeah.
it. Like we weren't taking it seriously or anything, but we weren't being as whimsical, and that kind of when we played, we had amusing narratives. Like I was trying to collect clocks, and I nearly had my full set of clocks, which was very valuable. They kept chucking clocks away. They kept taking them, not even keeping them, and I was getting really angry at all the clocks being thrown away when I want clocks. So yeah, we just it's kind of a facility that like the game is very simple, but it is a facility. It can facilitate really enjoyable experience if engaged with and if approached in the right way. There's a little less replay value than you might think. You mentioned that the mansions can have special abilities. I mean, I think you have to play with those. Frankly, the game is too simple without them. If you just play it as simply a bidding or a blind, no, it's not a blind bidding, is it? But I guess it is blind bidding.
I mean, it's not bidding though, is it? It's like it's a sort of secret action selection. I don't know what we'd call that, but you're functionally just it's blind guessing.
Hidden movement.
Yeah, hidden movement.
It's not really that either. But yeah, if you play with it simply as a bluffing game of where am I going to go and collecting sets of these of loot, then it falls down quite quickly. It's a bit too simple. The mansion, special extra abilities, extra rules make it a lot more fun. So because I think you have to play with that kind of does break it. It removes some of the
how many players were in? So sorry, but there are alternate mansions, right? I think there's 5, and you play with 3.
There's 5, I think.
Yeah, so you can swap them in and out. There's a little bit of replayability there, I suppose.
Yeah, no, there is. Just not as much as
it would have been nice to have more mansions. Or maybe some asymmetrical thief powers or personalized objectives or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely scope for a bit more
complexity,
bit more variety. Yeah, and complexity.
But
but look, due to its short, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, just to interrogate your group a little bit more there. How many players were you playing with this time? So
4.
There's 4.
Yeah, it does play up to 5, I believe.
Because we also found, didn't we, that some of the mansion powers could be quite consequential, and with 3 players, it was quite difficult to challenge people on that, because functionally you get the mansion power when you go there by yourself. And so you have to evade the other players. And we thought that in a bigger group, it would be harder to evade other players, but also it would be easier for people to challenge those powers because you would have fewer turns. So there'd be more challenges between your turns. But we found in the 3-player game, somebody could quite easily get in there and then continue that power unchallenged. And that made quite a big difference. I mean, in the end game scoring, it felt more impactful, I think, than the end game scoring played out. But I was wondering if we found that but I mean, the person with the powers, I think that was you. I think you got 2 of the 3 powers and you won. But we did.
It was the dog. There's a dog that lets you, every time it comes back around to you, lets you basically get some free loot. And that triggers again at the end of the game, and that was the thing.
But also I think there was the hidden loot as well, where you find a treasure map and then it tells you to go somewhere else by yourself.
Oh, that was the least CMON.
Yeah, Rob got that, but again, like because you have to go on your own to gain the information, and then you have to go again on your own to act on it. Nobody else could even get the information before Rob had a chance to resolve the whole thing.
Yeah. Whereas in the 4-player game, no one ever even got the information.
Yeah. So I think at I think it felt like it wanted to be a higher player count.
Yeah. No. I think it's a small data pool. The 2 games I've played, but the data so far is supporting the assumption that you were making, the conclusion you came to. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just what I wanted to mention there. I think at the 3 players, I think maybe taking those asymmetrical powers out might possibly be better, or just playing maybe without some of the different mansions.
Well, a better functioning game maybe, but I don't think it'd be. I think it would be then too simple. Is the problem?
That's fair.
Problem with it. I think I also hypothesized that it would be slightly too long at 5 players for what it is. I think 4 players felt like a real sweet spot. That is speculation. I have not played it at 5, but I think 4 was a real sweet spot in my opinion. And due to the short length for what it at 4 players and the ease of play, and I can see it being broken out. I think my group will play it again. I think it's a good one for my collection.
Nice. Well, there you go. So I think, and I can think of some groups within the board game clubs that I attend that would also probably be quite enjoy it. It's a sort of lighthearted,
Mhm.
uh, bluffy, hidden information game where, yeah, I think if players were looking for an excuse to sort of have some table talk and engage with each other in some above table, nonsense, then it certainly delivers on that. But yeah, if you want to get into the nitty gritty mechanisms of that set collection, I think you'll probably want something a bit meatier or a little bit more deterministic.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to Tax the Rich, I won't break. I have spoke about this with Barry on the last podcast episode, so I won't go into any details of the rules or anything. But obviously it's designed by Christian Amund Olsby, I think Utsby. Apologies, and Kjetil Svensson, art by Serena Shiani, and it's published by Allion. I just want to. I've played it at 4. That's why I wanted to mention it because it is quite different at 4 in terms of as Mike mentioned on the last episode that we played at 3, where it's essentially a free for all in terms of there's no team based trick taking. It's purely bidding, and then 2 people are trying to take down the whoever holds the contract. We played at 4 players, so funnily enough, in all 3 rounds the teams were the same, but that was purely coincidence. As Mike mentioned, the teams can change based on every time the contract holder essentially chooses a teammate based on a card they have each round. I must say though, I do want to mention this is one of the most thematic games I've ever played.
Oh really?
And I think that how well the theme is implemented was understated by yourself. I think it's people think of for a theme to come through, it doesn't have to be a massive game with miniatures and maps and this and that. I think things like the feminist revolution benefiting all women, even though the ones who aren't feminists, like that's such a clever like regardless of your opinions on regardless of whether you're a misogynist, even a misogynist can understand it's thematically true.
He's thematically accurate, yeah, for sure.
It's thematically accurate, exactly, because that's the philosophy of feminism, that it benefits everyone, even if right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you wanted to be super thematic about it, actually, it should give +2 to all the men. But I just think the theme is so beautifully implemented. It's the closest to a standard trick taking game I think I've ever seen in a board gamified trick taking game. It's so at its core, it's so simple a trick taking game. It is just a trick taking game. It's even the bidding is very similar to bridge style bidding, just without the ability to jump bid, and without partner communication at the bidding stage. And the fact that it is partners at all. The individual points for winning tricks, plus the bonus, so the fact that there's individual points for winning tricks creates just enough discourse in the Discord in the team who's trying to take down the contract, or indeed trying to make the contract, because you might steal a trick from your teammate to win that 1 point, which I think is again thematically really interesting, that even allies in an economical tier are still pitted against each other in capitalism. I think it's so the theming is just wonderful. So the extra rules that are laid onto this base very very simple trick taking game are really 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 good. A good innovation. Things like the incompetent leader, you can't lead with the ace. That's I've never seen that before in a trick taking game. But it's again very thematic, and also just a good rule for trick taking games that you can't just play out your aces. The tax the rich, obviously, the rule we keep forgetting to play with, where if you win with a 1, you can steal a trick. I don't know why we keep forgetting that's a rule, but it is.
I don't think anyone won with a 1 in our one game, but yeah,
they did, I think, but we worked out it wouldn't have affected anything because you won so easily.
But yeah, that's I mean, it's important to keep in mind strategically, though, for sure.
Yeah,
especially if you know that people have like a void and you've got the 1, or like the table has a void and you've got the 1. Like that could be huge.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you've called a revolution, and the 1s are now the best card. And actually, funny enough, I found in the first round, someone asked for a 12 to be a partner, but in the subsequent 2 rounds, people asked for the 1s for a 1 to be a partner, because the people started to see the value of the 1s. But anyway, yes, all those extra rules. Look, they really elevate this trick taking game. It is my favorite trick taking game by absolutely. The extra rules mixed up there's extra rules to mix up as well, which we haven't tried yet, but I'm excited to try. The only thing that I do have a couple of things to point out, which are not really super positive. With 4 or more players, there's actually, this is probably why we didn't notice it in the rules. There are the 2 players win together, the top 2 scoring players. I don't know why that's a thing. It seems odd. It kind of created a situation in the last round of our 4-player game where I think I was the contract holder in that last one, and I needed to be. I tried to use the bidding to work out roughly what people had, and then try to get the correct partner. Because basically, Deborah and someone else were far ahead of me and the other player, and I needed to get in with. I need to partner up with, for whatever reason, I can't remember what it was. Specifically, need to partner up with this person so that I could try and. Oh, because Deborah was in second, so if I could partner up with this other person, I could potentially jump Deborah and come second, and therefore win. So it did create that nice little interesting situation. It didn't work out that way in any way, but I don't know why 2 players win together. That's very odd to me. There's no reason for it, and one player could have way more points than the other.
I guess
it just seems weird.
There must be some issue with the team-based, because it's got a rotating team-based mode, right? So it's like 2v2, but you bid on, and you don't get to choose who's on your team. You announce the card, and whoever's the card holder is now your teammate. And it's possible they found in some configurations going into the final round that maybe that sort of team-based mode broke down if certain people were allied. They just ended up sabotaging each other or not play, and it wasn't fun.
Maybe, yeah. Well, that would be. I mean, sabotage each other would be fine, but yeah, if it wasn't fun, then that obviously. Well, so I mean, the other thing it could have combated potentially a problem where someone is in a position where they simply can't win. And there's another thing in the game which kind of counters that as well, which I don't like, which is the bids. So the bonus points for making contract or taking down a contract in the later rounds are worth more points, which is an artificial escalation, which doesn't really make competitive sense.
Yep.
I don't know why making a slam of winning all the tricks on round 1 is worth whatever it is, 8 bonus points, but it's worth 16 in round 3.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. I don't like it.
Yeah, I felt more or less the same. It doesn't seem to, when we played it, it doesn't make any sense that, because the game state doesn't functionally change. You're just doing 3 rounds of the exact same thing. You're not developing anything or changing anything over time. It doesn't make sense that the 3rd round is worth a lot more points than the 1st. It could be. Well, I guess actually the one thing I will say on that point is just that the one factor is, of course, people's scores, right? People are developing a score over time. So it might well just be a catch-up mechanism. It might well be because the loser is incentivized to push harder for the contract, to develop tension, and then there's a chance they could come back. So yeah, because the one consistent factor across all 3 rounds is people's developing scores.
I think you're right. It could encourage people to play the game the way that the designer wanted it to be played, but it doesn't make competitive. So I guess it's because I'm comparing this so much to a pure trick taking game like Bridge, and doing so with admiration and as a compliment. But I guess then through that lens, it falls down somewhat in the almost chess-like balance that Bridge kind of has, which leads me on to the last negative point, which is a lack of a no trump bid. Makes it kind of reduces the worth of balanced hands quite significantly. So in it's common trick taking games as well as bidding. For example, so I'm using Bridge as the example because though I know best, I'll continue doing so. You can bid in clubs, diamonds, hearts, or spades, or you can bid no trump, where you will play the hand out basic or outright. It's a useful. It's because sometimes you might have a very powerful hand but have no clear favored suit, and your partner might also not be able to, or it's more nuanced in Bridge because the partner, obviously, your partner might not be able to match with you might not be able to get the hands to merge correctly, and you might end up wanting to play in no trump. And the inability to do that, I think, kind of again, it just takes a competitive sheen off of Tax the Rich. I think Tax the Rich is like, as I said, it's wonderfully thematic. It's brilliant, brilliant trick-taking game. I love all the extra rules they've added, but I think a couple of things they've left out just take away the ability for it to be a highly competitive trick-taking game. So I guess I'd recommend this to basically anybody who likes trick-taking games, but people who really, really like trick-taking, like I really like trick-taking games, and so does one of the other members of our group, and he loved it as well. So it's funny to, I guess if you love trick-taking games, you'll love it. But if you really love the hardcore competitive nature of trick-taking games, then you'll have some gripes with it.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably a good fit for a group that maybe has a diverse range of people who are familiar with stuff like that. You know, if you're happy playing bridge with your bridge group every week, you probably don't need this. It's
Mm-hmm.
not adding enough. Or, you know, it's like you're not bored of bridge, you know?
The thing is,
So,
it's adding some great things.
mm,
It's just that, but if you're a competitive bridge player because you love how perfect a game that is
mhm,
from through the lens of through a certain lens, not a perfect game, obviously. I mean, it's got a dummy for God's sake,
mhm.
who doesn't get to play every hand. um, but if you love Bridge through that lens, then yeah, it doesn't. What it's adding what it's adding versus what it's taking away is probably it doesn't really
Mhm.
go anywhere, I guess.
Yeah,
But
so some
yeah,
interesting novel additions then, but it's not got that sort of perfectly balanced cutthroat competitiveness.
yeah. Although, but I still think it is probably my favorite trick taking game though. I think it is still competitive.
Mm,
Like the best player will win, like for
mhm.
sure. Um, apart from when Mike won, that was obviously
That was a
beginner's luck.
complete fluke. Yeah, could be right.
But yeah, I still highly recommend it. Absolutely love it.
Hopefully, that's. I think that's still for pre-order. You obviously picked it up at Essen, and it sold out at Essen. So hopefully, the retail stock will be making its way to stores soon, and people can try it themselves. We've got more Essen releases to cover because this is the Essen special,
Yes, the next quick play was White Castle Duel,
which I mentioned briefly. I
which
think I possibly even
mhm.
only mentioned this on the charity live stream where we played the White Castle two-player with a fan of White Castle, Mark from Ninja Geek Gaming.
You've played it. Have you played it again, White
No,
Castle
no, we
Duel,
played the
or
White
since
Castle
our
two
game?
player. So, but
Okay,
I've only
good.
played Duel with
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Mike and I played it very late at night, one of the nights at Essen when the other two were in bed. It's by Isra C. Isra C. and Shay S. Art is by Joan Guardiat, and it's published by Devere. Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to White Castle, similar in theme and certain gameplay ideas, as well as in the super tight action economy. Um, but then the ability to chain actions together can really placate that tight action economy. And it's also very compelling and exciting, I find. I think at one point I managed to do effectively three core actions in one turn, just by chaining things into each other. I find the player interaction quite meaningful with the lamp placement, as well as the lamp
Mhm,
retrieving. Um, also the action slots themselves. You the action sorry, the actual action tiles themselves can be moved with a certain player resource. I remember in our game that became very tense at the end where we were swapping them around, and this happened again in my subsequent
mhm,
game. I think that's very it's the play it's very the player interaction is very meaningful and very can be very cutthroat. Um, the three scoring opportunities are all extremely different. I think you can focus probably on definitely one or two and do well. Sorry, definitely two and do well, and definitely three and do well. To a certain extent, I think you could specialize in one, but I think you'd lose some synergy opportunities. So I think you have to have a little dabble. You have to dabble into at least a second one to some extent. Um, I think you might struggle to win if you really only focused on one. I found it to be overall very, very similar in feeling to the White Castle, but I did also feel it was different enough. I found it different enough that I was a little surprised. I was almost surprised it wasn't branded as its own thing. I
Mm.
know you felt it was even more similar.
Well, I
You
was
felt it was very
I sort of
similar, right?
forgot. So I played the White Castle again recently at 2 player, so it sort of helped me to develop this comparison. But I'd actually forgotten until you just mentioned it right now that the sort of the two core. So the core, what are the core conceits, of course, in White Castle is that you've got the 3 colors of dice on the bridges, and you're drafting the dice, and you get 3 dice around. There's 3 rounds, and in multiplayer, you get to stack the dice on top of each other provided they're higher, people can sort of duplicate action spaces, right? And at 2 player, the way they get around not having fluid action spaces on the board is that they just don't allow stacking. So there's just fewer action spaces at 2 player. There's no stacking. So I rather flippantly said that, what this does is it adds the stacking back into the 2 player game because now you're taking, instead of the bridges, you have these little cylinder pieces and you're stacking those up on the main game board. But actually what they've done as well to make this action selection system feel more distinct is that they've removed the 3rd round. So actually you just have a round where I think each round is they all go out and they come back. Is that one round or is
there's one round where they all go out,
round
and
where
then
they
the
all
second
come
round
back?
they all come back.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I remembered it. And that feels really unique and quite particular because what it means is that you've got this sort of player agency around the order in which they go out, and then some column or cylinders will be trapped under others until they're released. And it's the same system as White Castle where the 3 colors are triggering different things on your player board, and you might want to access those 3 colors. And just a bit like the bridges system, you can access whatever colors are available to you. So you start actually the game with an even spread of colors, but then that changes immediately once you start playing, which is really interesting. And I think does give it enough distinction from the White Castle to feel like it's bringing something else to the table. Having said that, I think the core vibe is still very, very similar. The core vibe is, I don't have enough actions. How can I chain these actions to get good things? Oh, look, I can do a bunch of actions over here, but maybe they aren't getting me what I actually want right now for my strategy. Oh, what do I do? And if you get
yeah, it looks the same and it makes you feel
Yeah.
the same, but I think weird enough, it's actually quite different when you're playing it, even though it makes you feel
Yeah.
the same way. And arguably, that's the most important thing with art, how it makes you feel. So it's weird that they are. It's incredibly similar whilst being very different. It's quite an interesting. You know what? White Castle versus White Castle Duel would probably be the most interesting of all the Duel games to write an academic paper on. The adaptation of.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about the dual games in general, as a broad generalization, is sometimes they are functionally the exact same game, and sometimes they're just a completely different game.
Mm-hmm.
And we could get into that, but not here, not now. I think, for me, if you're playing the White Castle a lot 2 player, and I think this is probably what I said about it originally as well, is that, if you're playing it a lot 2 player, or you think you're going to play it a lot 2 player, Duel is probably a better, sort of slightly more dynamic game for 2 players. I think if you're only getting one, right? They're both good at 2. The original has the capacity for more, so I don't know why maybe you wouldn't get that. It's also got an expansion which you can explore. But I do think that if you're going to play it only at 2 a lot, it feels like Duel is a bit more dynamic and a bit more interesting at 2. So maybe that's a better pick.
Yep, agreed. And it all fits in the box, unlike
Yeah, especially when you've got matcha and it's done.
Yeah. Oh god. And they're both also a complete headache to set up with so many little pieces.
Yeah, that's true. But
yeah, still really
yeah,
enjoyed it.
both good games, both fun to play. Crunchy little Euros that punch above their size and weight.
Absolutely. So next, moving right along, we've got Bouba Kiki. I don't think you spoke about this at all.
No, I think that's because you'd played it
episode.
more, and I'd only joined it partway through, and I'd not necessarily got a strong sense of the whole sort of game.
Yeah, I've played a fair amount of this at this point. It's a very simple game at its core. It's basically gamifying the Bouba Kiki effect, which I think we spoke about on our pre-Essen video in reasonable detail. The concept that shapes have associated inherently have associated sounds. So I do remember Mike being concerned from from me playing it a handful of times in the pub that the basic version of the game gets very old very quickly, and it does. And the campaign, which it does have a campaign. It's too long and advances too slowly to bother with, in my opinion. However, when we played it, when I played it again subsequently with my game group, we played the base version, and people were like, "Yeah, that was fun. Let's play again. Very quick, very nice, enjoyable. Let's play a more complicated version." So we chose an advanced scenario to spice it up, and that was really good fun. And I think these advanced scenarios definitely do give it some legs. The one we played, basically, it's initially usually you what's happening in the game is you have three nonsense words. Actually, it can be more than three, as it was. So you have three or four nonsense words, and then a player is going to play a shape. So they're going to all sorts of different peculiar shapes. They're going to play it to the table, and they're going to secretly note down with a wooden piece which of the available words they have named this shape. What the name have they given to this shape? And all the other players have to try and guess what they think it should be called, and hopefully you're at a consensus. And every player who agrees with the clue giver moves your little check marker along the scoreboard, and every player who didn't agree moves the X marker along, and you want to get the check marker to the 0 before the X marker. That's at core all it is. So in the standard version, it's 3 words available. You take it in turns to play a clue, and it's twice the number of players required to succeed or to fail. It's twice to succeed anyway. Maybe it's equal. No, I think they're the same. In our version, that can change. In our version, I think it was 3 times the number to succeed. So we needed to get 12 points essentially to win. There were 4 of us, and it was twice the number of players, which would be 8, to fail. So if we got 8 wrong, we'd fail. And the thing that made it particularly interesting was basically we had one hand of 4 cards, and we also had 4 words that it could be, and we had to pick a shape from that hand, as per normal, go through the typical scoring process, and then that same hand of cards we pass the next player to make their choice, and they would only get to draw a new card to their hand if at least 50% of the team, or I think it was over 50% of the team actually. No, I think it was 50%, but it was over 50% in our case because it was 2 out of 3. 50% of the guessers had to get it right for you to the previous one to correct to be allowed to draw a new card. So what happened was we ended up going slowly down from a choice of 4 cards to a choice of 1 card, and you just had to deal with it, and it made it a lot more fun. And it was really good. Now, is that going to make me break this out instead of Dixit? Because it's very Dixity in terms of associating one card with another one, and then trying to see who you agree with each other. Probably not. It probably still has a lot less shorter legs than something like Dixit. Not as evergreen. But it definitely, the more complicated game modes definitely do give it a bit of life, and it's a fun game. Like Pinched, I can see myself breaking this out with that group, but not super often, perhaps. Oh, it's language independent, even though it uses words, which is kind of interesting when you think about it.
Yeah, that is actually a fun thing to consider. I wonder how much the pronunciation of the words would actually change across different language speakers.
I could try it with my in-laws and see what happens and let you know.
Well, it is the, I don't know the term actually for the English alphabet, but it is the same alphabet, isn't it? In many languages, but not always the same.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even as long as you can hear it's sound, right? It's actually not about the printed word; it's about the way the word sounds. So even if you played with somebody, in theory, you could play with someone who only spoke Arabic and who had no familiarity with the English language or alphabet. In theory, you could play with them. You'd have to say the words; they wouldn't be able to read the words. And in theory, you could say all the words out loud and play with them, and it would work.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, so long as they looked at the word and pronounced anything, the game would still function.
That's true, yeah.
And I was going to say, down at when we were playing it at Essen, and we were playing it at the local pub there, and very quickly people started to pronounce things in very silly ways. So even amongst people who knew how it should be pronounced, it didn't. Or it was the emphasis people were playing with more than anything, actually.
When you take that too far, I think the game breaks down a little bit.
Yeah. It's definitely,
But
it's
yeah,
there. Yeah.
that's Bouba Kiki. Very quickly then, I think the last one in this section, very quickly, is Lightspeed Arena. I've played a fair amount more of this as well. It's by Leonardo Alessi, James Ernest, apologies, Tom Jolly, and Emmanuel Santillani, with art by Marco Sagioni. 4 designers and 1 artist is a strange ratio. Published by Tablescope. This was wasn't it was a Kickstarter, wasn't it originally?
Well, I mean, this is a game that, yes, it was a Kickstarter by Tablescope, who are known for their scoring apps.
Oh
But
yes,
this
yes,
is
yes,
also
yes.
like the 3rd edition of the game, right? So before this it was Lightspeed, and before that it was Stellar Conflict. So this has been around for a while. It's
Mhm.
just this is the first time where it's got an app integration to do the scoring for you, where before it had to be string or elastic bands. Um,
Yeah, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up very briefly. I know you spoke about it last
yeah, and I was
week.
I was just
No,
going to
not last
say,
week. Last step.
also the
Oh,
just very quickly while we're doing credits, I think I think Lightspeed is the very original, which was then re-implemented by Stellar Conflict, I think. But the original was James Ernst and Tom Jolly, I think. Now,
oh, I see. So it's
so I
been
don't know how
yeah.
many of those
Okay.
designers
Okay.
actually worked on Lightspeed Arena and how many are being credited because it was their original concept.
Got you. Okay. Well, so I have you played much more of this out of interest in Essen?
So I
Because we one of the
I
things you mentioned
forgot to bring
is
it to
how
the
we all
Christmas
went out.
party and I regretted it. I was like, oh, that would have been a really good fit. But no, I haven't had much chance.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully it would have been. But I mean, because as you said, we played it, we really enjoyed it, and then we all went out and bought it. And I do kind of want to say it's amazing fun at first, but the novelty does soon wear off.
Yes, we played it a little bit at GridCon actually.
And had the novelty worn off at all?
Um, a little bit.
Yeah, I think in addition, the extra rules aren't needed. The game thrives from simplicity and
Yep.
chaos. Adding in the advanced rules are absolute. It's just too much. Um, like it takes the game from like a 1 weight out of 10 to a 2 weight out of 10. Don't get me wrong, but it's too much.
Yeah, so I
Um,
mean, for the people at home, functionally what you're doing is you're getting a bunch of spaceships and then you have real time, like it takes a minute, right? If you're placing 6 ships, the game's over in an actual minute. But you're placing the ships down in a sort of predetermined space to point they're shooting lasers, point the lasers at each other. And that's pretty much it, right? You just point them, try to hit the opponent's ships. You're all placing each ship in 10-second increments in real time. There's no turns, so you're all placing simultaneously. And then at the end, you take a photograph of it, and the app just works out where all the lasers shot, and if anyone was hit, and you get points for hitting, and you get extra points for killing. And that's pretty much it. The advanced rules functionally give each faction that you're playing as an asymmetrical power, and also there are 2 meteorites that when you hit them, you get to mine some goods. And if that ship survives, you get the points, and if it's destroyed, you don't get the points. That's it. But now in the advanced rules, the meteorites will add an additional power. And what we found was turning on all of those things. So each faction has an asymmetrical power, and each meteorite is adding an additional wrinkle. Just it's nobody's thinking about it. Nobody's thinking about it. So all that happens is at the end when you take the photo and it's resolved, random stuff is happening that people weren't expecting. And if you like that additional unpredictable chaos, I guess you'll like that. But for the most part, it's enough to be thinking about just are my lasers pointing at things?
I don't agree though that if you like the unpredictable chaos, you'll like that because we do, and I did.
Hmm.
That's the core. The base game is unpredictable chaos, but it's unpredictable chaos that feels controllable, even though it isn't, and then things go
Yeah.
wrong. And with the additional, nothing feels controllable, and it all just becomes a bunch of silly
Hmm.
nonsense. And you come away from it feeling dirty about how stupidly chaotic it was.
Mm.
Whereas in the base version, you walk away thinking, "Oh, isn't that hilarious that I blew up my own ship when I was meant to be shooting
Yeah.
you?"
So yeah,
Where it's
without that chaos or without the asymmetrical rules, yes, there's some sense of accountability. Like this was my fault,
yes,
and then
and even if it is still nonsense, that
yeah,
even if it's just a facade, it doesn't matter. The
yeah,
facade
you
works.
believe it was your fault. I mean, I agree
Yeah.
with you fundamentally. I do think that there is possibly a table of people who would like that degree of chaos, like no accountability. What happened? It was so silly. I think that those people probably do
Oh yeah,
exist,
but a
but
bunch of savants who are
oh,
a group of savants who will exist, who in 10 seconds can assess what will happen and
mm.
play their place optimally. Sure, they
I
can
wasn't
learn
talking
from that.
about savants. I was just talking about people who would prefer to have no agency and no accountability. I just
Oh
don't care
right,
and just want to see, maximum chaos. What happens? I do think those people exist, but I agree fundamentally. I prefer this idea that we had some control, and oops, it got out of control. And the base
yeah,
game delivers on
exactly.
that. So the expansion factions only really add value in the sense that they allow more players. I think, probably more than 3 is better, but 5 does feel like a lot. Um, so
I think 4 is again the sweet spot, honestly.
But I think that this is the sort of game where, like, I think that the other thing is, I think it's a bit of a bummer to resolve on a phone, right? Like, we found that resolving it with a tablet was much more satisfying. And again, when we played it at GridCon, we just had someone's phone, and it's sort of like, this is the fun part, to go through the consequences and see, oh no, what happened? And you miss those moments where you shot yourself in the foot when it's on a phone.
Well, this is my other issue with it that developed. First of all, yes, it has to be a large screen, otherwise you just won't get the buy-in from players in the resolution. But that's the other issue, the fact that the game really does require buy-in from the players in that scoring phase, which you won't necessarily get from
Mm-hmm.
everyone, because the game is over in a minute, the actual things you're doing, and I do the ratio of gameplay to resolution is bad, essentially. It's not good to be scoring a game for 3 minutes that you played for 1 minute. Even though even if being taken care of on a phone,
Mm-hmm.
it's if it really relies on the players being very engaged with everything that's happening on the screen. Um, I just yeah, I think it falls apart in if it's not got exactly the correct group of players who all are very engaged in the resolution. Um, and a lot of people won't be because you've already had your fun. you know. I can see. I actually don't know if the app does. The app have a button just for auto resolution? I think it might do, just to just skip it all and go straight
I
to
don't
one.
think
If
so.
it doesn't, it should add it. I think a lot of people would quite like that.
Hmm.
I think it's having to click on everything individually. It's very tedious. I'd quite like to. I'd like it in
Hmm.
between. I don't want it to just skip it all and tell me who won, but I also don't want to click everything. I want to press a button and it just resolves everything. Why do I have to confirm that I shot you?
Well, I think it's isn't it to do with collecting the points on screen? Like, it will actually. I think.
But why do I have to
Well,
do
I think
that?
one of the things
I
it
get the
does,
points
yeah, I
anyway.
think one of the things that it does that's a little curious is that it wants you to confirm the shots. It wants you to confirm the collection of the points, but then the actual tallies are hidden. So I think it would
Yeah,
be a
it's
bit more
daft.
compelling, at least when you're collecting the points, if you could see everyone's tallies and have some idea about where you're standing in relation to each other. I mean, they might have decided to keep that hidden so it's a big surprise at the end. Maybe that worked out to be more exciting, but it is an app. You could just put in options and people can do what they want.
Exactly. Make it an option. Because if it's a big surprise at the end, then the whole resolution it's all meaningless. Because you don't, no one's keeping track of it. No one really understands fully what's happening. Let's face it, especially if it's on a
Yeah.
phone. And then suddenly you find out if you won or lost. It's yeah. They haven't got that balance right at
Well, I
all.
think the I do think it is very noteworthy, the distinction between doing it like on a tablet that everyone can see, where everyone can kind of reach out and press when it's their turn, and that, I guess the idea is that keeps them engaged. Whereas when it's a phone and nobody can really see what's happening, and even the person holding the phone like might struggle to understand what's shooting what. So I do think like it is a game that has that big technical limitation. Somebody needs to have a big tablet.
Yeah, we played on a tablet here, and it
Mhm.
still became tedious to resolve it. It's I guess my advice to anyone who plays this game once or twice and is like, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I would just say wait a bit, play it again a bit later, before you go and buy it.
Yeah, I don't think you need multiple copies of this. And I do think functionally it's like, and I think maybe this is also the thing about, like, I do wonder if when you're doing it all manually, i.e., the string or the elastic band system, is that then more exciting because there's a slower pace, a slower build up. You're actually having to stay engaged and work things out. I don't know. I think for me, this is a sort of a pub game where we're just throwing things down on the table. We're having a drink. We're not worried too much about it. But with the app, the scoring is less than 10 minutes. The actual gameplay is a minute. So like the whole thing is over in 11 or 12 minutes. And I wouldn't want to play it more than a couple of times. And I think it probably is that. So I guess the real question is it worth 11 or 12 minutes of fun? You know,
I mean, I don't even think it's that long. I think it's probably only about 3 or 4 minutes to score, probably. Maybe 5.
It depends how quickly you tap through that app and how much people are.
Well, yeah,
and
true.
whether you're passing the scoring around and things. But yeah, I mean, functionally, it's at most going to be that much. Probably less. You're right. Probably half that. So like for 10 or 15 minutes of fun down the pub every so often, it's probably. All right. But yeah, I think that, it's got all this scope for making it more complex, but it doesn't improve it. And I wish it maybe was a smaller box, but it could be a smaller box. Easier to carry, like a deck of cards.
You can rebox.
Yeah, I can, and I can make it significantly smaller because it's just tiles.
That's my loss there.
I don't know. I think I wouldn't mind bringing it out to the games group on a Tuesday and seeing how we get on with it.
Oh yeah, I'll play it again. I'll utilize it. But I just thought it was noteworthy that I cooled off of it quite quickly.
Yeah, and I've sort of found a bit of the same thing. I think the novelty is very upfront, but I also think like it will be remaining in one of those things where I'm like, oh. I've got a little bit of time to fill. Maybe we're waiting for someone. Like the thing is, it's gonna sit in a party environment, right? So it's like it's like I was annoyed I didn't bring it to the Christmas party because a couple of plays of it at the Christmas party would have been perfect. But I can't think of another occasion other than that sort of thing where it would be good, right? Like, or if we're at the pub, maybe we're gonna play something a little bit more significant, like Tax the Rich, when people arrive, but people haven't arrived yet, so we're just filling a bit of time. It's just a little activity to do really quickly. I think it fits that sort of spot, right? But
activity as opposed to game.
Yeah, and it's just a shame that it's reliant on a bigger device because that's going to be the thing, right? It's like I do want to just get my phone out and be like, yeah, we're just going to play this real quick, like for 10 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
But now I need to also have a tablet.
Yeah. Well, is what it is, unfortunately.
Alrighty. Well, we've got one more to talk about. This is one we've actually both been playing and we didn't cover yet. It is the tiny packet expansion for Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth Allies. This is a small blister expansion that we picked up at Essen. It's functionally, I think it's 8 cards. Is it 10 cards? 10 cards? But
16, isn't it? Isn't it 8?
Is it 8 each? So 16 cards. 8 for each faction, plus a little tiny bit of punch board that comes with a little currency that you're going to use to manage the cards. And it's very simple to implement. If you know Duel for Middle-earth at all, this is the Lord of the Rings reskin of Seven Wonders Duel, on the topic of dueling games that are not the same as the original game. But you're drafting cards. It's a head-to-head drafting game where you're drafting from a pyramid, and when certain cards are drafted, new cards will be revealed. That always feels like a bit of a gamble because you're giving new information to your opponent, and timing when to reveal those cards can be a big part of the game. But now there's a little bit of compensation because those are going to have some resources on, and if you're the person to reveal the card, you get that resource to trigger these opening cards. I got to play it just once with a buddy of mine who's played the game a few times, not as much as I have. And I triggered my abilities. They didn't trigger their abilities, but it's still quite a close game. So do the allies have much of a consequence? Well, I think Chris has had a much more different experience to me. So let's get into it.
So I think that they have a massive impact. Too big an impact, I would say. So some of them can literally win you the game from nowhere.
Okay.
Not from nowhere, but they can. So case in point, I believe it's Lobelia Sackville-Baggins.
The actual villain, right? An actual villain. Who's somehow in the good deck. Is she a villain card?
she's an ally card, and so when we were, this is a slight tangent, but it is related. When Mike and I were looking at the cards at the novelty show, we were speculating who one of the characters was, and the only thing we could come up with for this angry looking woman who seemed to be a hobbit, but you couldn't see her feet, um, was that she must be with an umbrella. Was that she must be Lobelia Sackville Baggins? But we were confused. But why she be a villain? Wouldn't she? And I looked into the lore of Lobelia, and something I hadn't. I guess I knew once upon a time when I read it, but so she does redeem herself. It's mostly her. So Lobelia and her husband are they're the ones who they've been trying to steal Bilbo's stuff, and they are angry at him for living so long. They wanted Bag End, and they buy Bag End off of him. Well, so it's actually her son, I think, is Lotho, who buys Bag End off of Frodo when he moves to Crick Hollow in Fellowship. And it's Lobelia's son who what's the word, cooperates and works with the ruffians who end up working for Saruman, Sharky. And he's the one who ends up kind of industrial. The Sackville Bagginses are incredibly, they are equally to blame, frankly, as Saruman for the scouring of the Shire, but it's her son who has been badly raised by her, and she was a piece of work herself. But she does upon seeing how bad this has gotten, she does repent, and she does end up giving Frodo back Bag End purely at just doesn't sell it back, gives it back because she doesn't want to be, because and her son dies in it, and she does end up fighting the ruffians with an umbrella. So she does have a redemption.
I do remember that from the scouring. They talk about the ruffians trying to sort of capture her, and she beats them off with an umbrella, and they take her to prison. I think that's I do remember that.
Yeah, so she's a baddie, but she's not. Yeah, she does. Yeah, she's not that bad. Anyway, but
she's a good guy card in this game. Is the point?
She is a good guy card. This is her. Her involvement comes at the point where she realizes that this really isn't on, and she needs to beat up some ruffians with an umbrella. And her ability. I mean, all this tangent and preamble to not even have managed to find the picture of her to confirm it, but I believe it's her ability, which allows you, the first ability, the entry ability, is to put basically put a troop out on the board anywhere. I mean, I have it here. Do you want me to get the box so we can confirm? And what we've got here is Lobelia, whose power is move a troop, and then later move one troop twice, or two troops twice. Is it move or place? I think it looks like actually place and move. Yeah, that was it. Yes, it is her. So the issue with this is you can play this. You can save up 3 tokens. Do you want to
yeah, so Lobelia Sackville Baggins. So the way these cards work, by the way, just for the rule's sake, is the first is you start with 3 of them, and then you pay a resource to trigger the first power, and then they go face up onto the table. So your opponent knows you have it now. So the first time it's a surprise, but the power is less powerful. And once it's face up on the table, you can trigger it a second time to trigger the second ability, which is a more powerful version of the first ability. So you need to collect 2 more resource to do that, which you'll get from drafting the cards. And so once you've got those 2, your opponent can somewhat at least understand that that's something you can do. And in this case, Lobelia says, place 1 unit in any region and then complete 1 movement on the central board. So you put out a unit and then move a unit. It doesn't need to be the same one, I don't think. And then it's her second ability, which is, I guess, the consequential one you're talking about, is place 2 units in 1 region, or 1 unit in 2 separate regions. After that, complete 2 movements. And yeah, if you're reaching for presence on that board, I can see that being huge.
It's not just the second one; it's the combination of both of them. You can save up to 3, and you can 1-2 punch it. You can't do both of them in the same turn, but you can play the first one. The first ability, the entry ability as it's called, you can play that at a time when there are no cards available for your opponent to take on their turn, which let them manipulate troops on the board. Right, and then you can punch immediately again. And then you just, so I went from, I got presence in 4 places in 2 turns, but 3 of, so you in theory you could get presence in 5 places in 2 turns. Yeah, which is out of the 7 you need, right? It's bafflingly terrible. It's so stupid, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it whatsoever.
Well,
At all, and you cannot expect them. You cannot expect. It is not reasonable to expect your opponent to monitor the board state, to monitor the presence of the board to that extent. That means you can't have two places. If they ever let you get two places, if the shadow player ever lets the ally player get two places, bear in mind they start with one, then they can potentially be surprise attacked and lose instantly,
yeah.
and there's nothing they can do about
Well,
it.
I was going to offer,
and that is absolutely.
I was going to offer a rather flippant defense, which was that the Balrog blocks paths, right? So if they had the Balrog in hand, they could surprise you with the Balrog, and you thought you could use Lobelia to take it over, and then the Balrog's like, no, it's shut down. But yeah, I mean, comparing.
Well, this is my problem. Those three cards that you have are secrets until you play.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And the entry abilities.
So I get exactly what you mean, and I think that didn't happen in our game. Nothing like that. We had some pretty tame, I guess, allies compared to Lobelia. I do think also my opponent was not as the ally cards I had were largely about just doing what you're doing anyway, but more. My opponent had not necessarily. They had the Balrog, but they were using it sort of aggressively, and it's not really an aggressive card. It's more of a defensive card. So they could have used it maybe to shut down some avenues or something against me. But I wasn't really focusing on the war board. I was focusing on winning via the ring track. So mostly I was just trying not to get overwhelmed on that board. I think you're right, probably about Lobelia. Maybe the answer is just to flip her face down and never put her in as an option. Because you only use 3 out of 7.
It's wildly imbalanced because, I mean, some of the ability, I can't remember who it is, but one of them has the ability, which is it Tom Bombadil, I think, actually. His one is block, basically block a ring space. And his second ability is block 2 of them. So it effectively means that if you play both of them, the opponent needs 3 additional ring symbols to win by that method. And that is just objectively worse than 3 troops on the board.
Yeah, so Bombadil, the currency you spend to trigger the powers, Bombadil will put them onto the Nazgul on the ring track, and then rings that would give you movement on the ring track instead just remove these tokens, which I agree it's not as strong as presence on that board. It also sucks, though, because instead of moving the Nazgul and getting a Benny, you're staying put and not getting any benefits at all. I had Goldberry, who's just straight up get some money. Like, I had Goldberry, who's get money. I had Elrond, who's get science. And I think I had Boromir, who's just remove your opponent's pieces from the board.
Does Elrond give you a token? Is it?
Yeah, it's basically the same as making a set of science. It's like,
yeah, that's too powerful.
Look at some science and get a thing.
What's his exit ability?
So his entrance ability is choose a race between the dwarves, humans, and elves. Take the top tokens, and then you may now benefit from take one and benefit from the effect. So it's the same as getting a set of 3 different ones, but only of the brown factions. So not the silver factions that come out later in the game. His exit ability.
They're so wild.
His exit ability is the same, but only wizards and ents. So he's functionally like 2 science sets, but yeah, I mean that is also actually massive.
Yeah, they're just, I don't know. I honestly don't know how this passed quality control. It's just nuts. Like they're wildly imbalanced. It's 14 cards and they're imbalanced in amongst themselves to an unprecedented degree.
I'm just having a look here at the shadow cards, because are they as imbalanced, or are you finding this particularly for the fellowship cards?
The fellowship is what I played as the allies in this instance. But it's not even if they were all super powerful, all 14 cards, they're too swingy.
Yeah, well, I was about to say 2 things. I was going to say, 1, if they're all broken, then nothing's broken. But 2, the problem is functionally this is a game built around really obvious heuristics, right? There are 3 ways to win, and it's very calculational, and that's what makes the card drafting so tight and consequential, is you can say, oh no, I can't let my opponent have any more rings. Oh no, I can't let them have any more science. Oh no, I can't let them place any more troops. And hate drafting, for want of a more pleasant term, is absolutely crucial because it's functionally just a tug of war back and forth game where you're playing over these 3 arenas. And so any sort of jump out and getcha on those areas with the secret information is hugely consequential. I don't know if it would be more palatable if these were face up, or if maybe they didn't have an exit effect. They were just face up and you could trigger their entry effect once. But you're right. The fact that you can just grab presents in 5 areas in 2 turns.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Doing it in 5 areas would be that would require a very specific board setup, and your opponent to have almost no troops on the board. Don't get me wrong. That is unlikely. But I got definitely 3, and I think maybe 4 with just those actions. That's nuts. You can't. It's just. I think this was play tested precisely one time, and it went really badly, and they went just publish it anyway. I think it's probably the worst expansion I've ever played in my life. It's abysmal. It shouldn't be. It's a travesty.
Okay. Well,
honestly, don't buy it.
You've made me want to play it a few more times and see if I can find it to be as broken as you have. I do think it's like Lobelia's power is going to be incredibly consequential if you're ignoring or if you're not prioritizing the war board, that board, and if you are prioritizing it, maybe it's also a problem because your opponent's got better defenses with less cost.
Thing is that if neither of you are prioritizing it, then you could win from nowhere.
Exactly.
Because you could actually get 5 places. If you're ignoring it and they're prioritizing it, you can completely scupper everything they've done.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, and then that's a lot of wasted drafting.
And if you're both prioritizing it, again, you can just win with it. So it's ridiculous. It just doesn't work.
Yep. I can see that. I can see how that would be a thing.
And I said Elrond is too powerful as well. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a reward you get for drafting 2 or 3 cards, and now you just get it.
Well, you have to get the little sciencey things, the little shadowy tokens.
That's you do for any of these abilities. Like they're not just free abilities.
Well, I guess I think you're probably right. These do seem to be too consequential, especially for hidden information that you can't robustly strategize around.
That's the issue. The fact that
that's a huge problem. I think potentially. We didn't find that necessarily come out in our game too much, I guess it just didn't manifest in our one play. I would be interested to play with someone who knew the base game really well and see if it manifests more clearly. I think if both players knew how powerful these new cards could be and were deliberately trying to draft these tokens off of the main board around that, does that go some way to mitigating this issue? I don't know. I suspect not. But I'd be interested to see that. Having said that, I also think if you're trying to draft the face down cards, whereas in the base game, you're actively trying to avoid flipping them up, that's a huge change in the style of the game as well. And I don't know if that would improve it. So,
I mean, I like the idea of flipping things up is now good for you as well. Well, actually, do I?
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not sure I do anymore. But if both of you knew the game well, you both knew the cards well. That the problem would still be the hidden information still makes it a problem. You don't know what it's going to be, and you could say, okay, well now we're gonna fight tooth and nail to get the tokens, the power tokens, but then eventually someone's going to get one, and now the person who doesn't get it is just sitting there terrified of what they have, what mad rubbish are they going to throw at me.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, I think
that's not fun. I know they've got something broken, but I don't know what it is.
I think, 2 thoughts, just speculating again, because I've only played it the once, this expansion. But one is that I think, functionally in the base game, when you flip over, like, you're like, okay, I have to reveal a card, I couldn't get out of it, and also if it's a ring, I've just lost. Now, that is probably the worst part of the base game. But ultimately, like, it does need to end. And if you wind up in that situation, maybe you just made some poor drafts earlier, or maybe you're just unlucky, but that's a part of it. It's the worst part. So in theory, I like the idea of some kind of compensation for flipping a card face up or something. or at least something to mitigate what could functionally be a really unfortunate set of reveals, right? In theory. Now, in practice, I don't know because the drafting is so tight and flipping those cards is so consequential, and maybe I actually do like that pain. I don't know. But the other thing I would mention is that I like the tightness of sort of focusing. I like the pressures of like, oh, I'm doing rings and you're doing the war map, and I can't take my eye off that ball for too long, or else you're going to win it. But I want to keep pressure over here. So, like, finding that balance. Like, if the outcome of allies is everything is more dangerous now, so I can't really focus on one thing, I just have to be really generalist. That's not fun. That's not interesting anymore. Just really sort of equally prioritizing everything equally reduces decision space. It reduces pressure. It reduces gambling, where you're gambling on like maybe getting rings before your opponents can get deployment cards, stuff like that, which is probably not a good strategy, but it's also one I lean into because I am a gambler. So like, you know, I think you're taking away strategic horizons there by just forcing people to be generalists so they can't be surprised in any one arena and caught off guard and just lose. Yeah, so that's a bummer to hear. I will possibly explore this a bit more if I can find someone who's into the game to play it with.
Yeah, so hope maybe we can get a game in of it at some
Yeah,
point.
I mean, given that we've both played a fair bit and we know what's going on, it might be interesting to just play a few back to back and see if we can just knock each other out with allies.
Yeah, might become a game of fainting.
I can't let him know that I drafted the 3 shittiest allies. I'm out of this game already.
Just I'm gonna get all the power tokens and
Yeah.
sit on them. He doesn't know.
Chris is like, why?
You don't know what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be
I
big.
actually got the Smaug card. It's just collect the power tokens. Just have them. Never
Yeah.
spend them. Just own them.
Good old dragon sickness. All right, so
Yeah, that takes us out of our sort of quick plays, the games we've already talked about, mentioned before, the ones we just wanted to update you on. We're going into our proper played section now. And Chris is going to kick us off again with another Essen title. This is one you picked up from...
Arcane Wonders.
This is one you picked up from Arcane Wonders, yeah.
Yeah, so this will be a relatively quick one, despite it being in this section, because it's a very small game. This actually came out in 2024, Arcane, but it came out in English this year at Essen, published by Arcane Wonders. Now it's called Onstage. It's designed by Michael Orion with art by Tuan Nguyen. It is a trick-taking game again, similar to Tax the Rich in that sense. It's themed around Vietnamese theatre. I know nothing about Vietnamese theatre. It looks a little bit like Japanese No theatre insofar as it uses heavy reliance on masks and stylized movement, but I don't actually know anything about Vietnamese theatre whatsoever. But that is the theme of it. It is a trick-taking game. It's very, very simple. It's very what's what I'm trying to say. Meat and potatoes of the game is just core trick-taking game. There's nothing unusual except for one big caveat, which is that this trump of the trump suit can change for almost any time, including in the middle of a trick. And that's kind of what makes it interesting. You have 4 suits, which are colors and symbol, which have a color and a symbol for a symbol for colorblind people such as I. They are numbered 1 to 10, I believe it is. The numbers, I want to say 2, 4, and 7 have an additional effect, and it is simply there's no bidding or anything. You just play out the hand, but the extra caveat is that you have these. Each suit has, I think it's 3. Yes, it is. So each suit has 3 meeples associated. So there's green, white, pink, and blue. There's 12 meeples, 3 of each color. Each meeple set has a meeple holding one bouquet, one holding 2 bouquets, and one holding 3 bouquets. At the start of the game, you will shuffle them up randomly and put them into a queue, trying to get onto the stage. The box itself actually turns into a nice little stage with a proscenium arch, which is quite nice. And the first thing that happens at the start of a trick is that the next meeple in line will takes the stage. So when there are meeples on when there are meeples on the stage, whichever meeple has the most, whichever color, whichever suit has the most bouquets on that stage, that is now the trump suit. So it's not most meeples. You could have the blue meeple with holding 3 bouquets, and you could have a white you could have 2 whites holding 1 bouquet each, and that would still mean that blue is the trump suit, even though the white bouquet, even though white has more meeples.
Mm.
When you win a trick, you can only each card itself also has a number of bouquets on it. So the 12 has 1 bouquet, for example. Or the 10 rather has 1 bouquet on it, whereas the 1 will have 3 bouquets on it because it's hard to win the trick with 1, obviously. And you can only take the meeple match. If you win with a 12, you can only take the bouquet, the meeple holding 1 bouquet from the stage to score. You can only score the meeples on the stage if you win with the matching card. If you win with the matching suit and that meeple's not there, you can take another meeple of the same suit, but you cannot take. But if you win the trick with a green card and there are no green meeples on the stage, then you actually don't score anything for that trick. You might as well not won the trick.
Huh.
All that you got is the ability to lead, I suppose. But in addition, as I said, I think it's the 2, the 4, and the 7 of each suit have an additional power. One of them is to take a meeple off the stage and put it the back of the line. One of them is to put the next meeple in the line onto the stage, and the other one is to swap a meeple on the stage with any meeple in the line. And at the start of every trick, the next meeple moves on. So there will always be one meeple moving on at the start of every trick, and then depending on whether or not the winning person who won the trick successfully actually scores or not, there may or may not be a meeple leaving the stage every trick as well. So you might have a sequence of tricks where it's just kind of one meeple on stage at a time, but then you might end up having a build up of meeples as well. People might be adding them, taking them away. And so the most interesting thing is the fact that it follows standard trick taking rules insofar as you must follow the lead if you can. But if you can't follow the lead, you could throw another card, and you could throw one of the 2, the 4, the 7, one of the cards that has the ability to add a new meeple. So you could throw a green card, and subsequently, and whilst throwing the green card, make green the trump, and now you're winning the trick.
Oh yeah.
But it was still a blue card that was led. So people can't outplay you unless they also have a void in blue. So all it does is adds this idea of the trump is out of everyone's control while simultaneously being sort of in everyone's control, and it's very, very fluid. And also the fact that you have to win the trick with the correct suit in order to be. I guess it doesn't have to be the trump suit, but the trump suit, winning a trick with the trump suit will always guarantee you points of some kind. And it may be possible to, depending on how many meeples on the board, it may be possible to win with an off trump suit and still score. So yeah, it just adds that the fact that you can win a trick and not necessarily score. You have to win tricks with the right suit. That's what it does. It just adds those little foibles. I played it twice with our friends who again, one of them really likes trick taking games, and yeah, we had a really nice time. It was just it's a good, very, very nice trick taking game, which kind of, it's like I said, it's completely standard trick taking with a nice little innovative twist. The fact that the trump suit can change mid-trick is kind of the key thing. And that it does require. I was very bad at it, even though I'm quite good at trick taking games usually. It requires careful planning and strategy, and I did not have it. I just couldn't get my head around around the way the trick. So something very interesting it does is trick taking games. So not that it does necessarily, but something kind of interesting talking point, in my opinion, is that trick taking games often the balance of them comes from a bidding mechanism, right? The inherent fact that we deal the cards out and your hand is better than my hand. There is no two ways about it. It's just the case. But the bidding system, especially in contract games where you have to essentially, or cat in the box, where, for example, you basically have to say, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to achieve with my hand. It counters the fact that your hand's inherently better than my hand, because you're going to commit to what you're going to achieve and you got to achieve it. This doesn't have that. but it doesn't need it because the whilst you might have a bad hand, in the conventional sense, you have the ability to control what the trump is, and therefore you can improve your hand as you play along. It's not perfect, there are still going to be inherently worse hands than others, but it was still a very, I hate the word interesting because interesting is such a nothing word, but it was still interesting to see how another way of dealing with that inherent imbalance in dealing cards out in a trick taking game.
So,
and I found it worked well, and it was a compelling enough variation. I think this year, as I said, it wasn't technically, it's not a 2025 release, but it was technically an English Essen release. I think, in my opinion, overshadowed by Tax the Rich this year. I think Tax the Rich is a much better trick taking game. But this is a simpler one, having said that, and it is essentially, as I say, just completely standard trick taking with this nice little innovation, which I enjoyed.
Just quickly, how many hands is it? What triggers the end game?
It's 3 hands, and it's just collective best scoring. You just do 3 rounds. And it's just whoever scores the most, just you track the score.
And the scoring is determined by the winner's color? Based on the number of bouquets on stage, is that right?
No. When you win a trick, if the trick that you won the suit, when you win a trick, if the suit that you won the trick with is represented on the stage, you will get to take that meeple physically. Okay. And each bouquet is one.
Okay. So could the game end when the meeples run out, or is that just not going to happen?
No, because at the end of at the end of the round of 10 tricks, you count up your bouquets and score them, write them down on a piece of paper, and then the line, anyone who's on the stage, basically the line is refreshed from everyone's scored meeples are reshuffled and put back in.
So those meeples are collected over the course of a hand, but then returned at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it looks interesting. It's basically like this it's offering, because you queue up the meeples next to the box, so it's sort of telegraphing some strategy around when different trumps could change. And then it's got this card counting element, I suppose, when you're trying to track, have the powers come out? Have they been played, or have they been ditched? What's going to happen? Yeah, cute. I think it looks like a nice little trick-taking thing. And the meeples are cute, too.
Yeah. Oh, it's the 1, 4, and 7 I just checked. I said it was the 2, 4, and 7. It's actually the 1, 4, and 7 that have the extra ability.
Yeah, I spotted it's 1 to 9 as well, but it's, no, that's not the deal breaker. I don't think I'm not playing it. No, there's no 10s.
It only has 9 cards per suit.
Yeah, like if you're calling us out because the range was slightly wrong, then, that's not the point. The point is we're here to give you the vibes, see if this is something you can get into.
And you're my kind of pedant.
No, it must be exactly right. They said there was 8 ally cards. Cool.
Basically, it's always 1 less than I think it is. That's
just every time you got to subtract 1 and then you'll be bang on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to dive into a big heavy box now. We've talked enough about small box games, light games, quick plays. It's time to talk about the number 1 game from the listed Essen. This is Orloj, the Prague Astronomical Clock. This is...
I believe it's pronounced Prague.
The Prague Astronomical Clock. This is designed by Abraham Sanchez Hermida and Paloma J. Pascual, who are co-designers on this, and co-designers on one other thing called Virus, Roland Wright. And the artist is Jesus Fuentes, who did Phoenix New Horizon, Concilium Urbis, Satyr, and more. I've written more. Looks like this person works a lot with the publisher, Paraloco Games. And then Amelia Sales is also here, who's done Genotype, Salt and Sea, and many, many more. So quite an established board game artist there. So the publisher is Paraloco Games, as mentioned, a Spanish publisher who's done a bunch of titles. They're still a relatively small-time designer, but they're usually showing up at Essen with something people are interested in. Like last year it was Phoenix New Horizon, and the year before it was Satyr. So this is a 1 to 4 player game. It says an hour to 2 hours, which is going to be highly variable in my opinion. It's a 3.6. And what I've done here is I've listed a bunch of similar games and their weights. This is a Euro game about combo building, action comboing. And you got Tilitum here, which is a 3.39. The White Castle is a 3.05. Mennefer, 3.68. Covenant, brand new one, 3.7. Unconscious Mind is a 4, but I feel like that's also because it's got the whole expansion thing going on. And Endless Winter is a 3.3, but again, Endless Winter, the big box with a million expansions, what's included there? I don't know. But this is sort of so solidly in that sort of like slightly heavier Euro or slightly heavier Euro style game area. But I was actually surprised this was only a 3.6. I thought it would probably swing a bit heavier than that. I just played it once. I played it with 4 players, and thematically what you're doing in the game is you're building the Prague astrological clock, which is a landmark in Prague. And what you're doing round to round is you've got a series of little workers who are your workers. You've got one special one and then a bunch of little ones. And you've got the clock face on the board.
Which do you mean the main
Yeah,
rondel
the main rondel,
itself?
yeah.
The main rondel moves. You can move it one between 1 and the range that you have established on one of your tracks.
That's right. You've got these upgrade tracks, and you have some amount of free movement. What you've got is this action rondel at its core, which is sort of mimicking the face of the clock, right? There's actually an inner track as well, which you can ignore. It's used for something else. But for the action selection, you're paying attention to the outer wheel and the middle wheel. The middle wheel rotates, and what it does is it lines up 2 actions. So you'll put a worker in there to trigger the 2 actions next to your worker, which you can do in either order. So already you've got all these combo opportunities, because whenever you're doing anything in the game, it's going to produce more things that happen and more things that happen and more things that happen, and then you want to do the one first that's going to give you the things to do the other thing, right? That's like the core conceit. You can have some agency. There's 3 upgrade tracks, which you'll get by studying at the university, and one of those tracks will upgrade movement of the middle wheel, so that you have some agency over how you line up the 2 actions. But you can also spend these deviation tokens, which will allow you to move it additional steps. But the problem with the deviation tokens is that that's the second part of the game, right? Because on your turn, you either place a worker down to trigger these 2 actions and off you go, or if you don't have enough workers, you can recall all your workers, and then you're going to trigger this like sort of a little refresh step. And the refresh step is going to be better based on your position on the pink upgrade track, which is also the university. However, the deviation tokens will punish you when you refresh based on how many you've used. So you want to try to fix them or pay them off before you refresh. So you've got this sort of balance of like, I'm not going to say miss a turn. It's like these refresh turns. You still get a bunch of stuff on the refresh turns, but it does feel a little bit like those sort of, like you're trying to minimize it, right? It's one of those action comboing games where you want to do as much as you can before you possibly reset. But there's 2 extra wrinkles, right? Because like functionally what the game is, other than that, is it's got contract fulfillment, several types of contract fulfillment. It's got like a pattern making game on your player board where you're collecting saints, and based on which ones you take and the position of these other 2 dials on the main board, you're going to get different costs and more benefits from that. You're going to get to collect these cards, and when you collect those cards, you can put the saints later, who you've got over here, onto those cards now to trigger more stuff. So again, you're sort of setting up all these different contracts you're trying to fulfill, requirements you're trying to fulfill, triggering these extra actions, bonus actions. But at the core, what you're building up is to this big action called the build action. And the build action lets you go into these 2 marketplaces. I'm going to call them marketplaces on the main game board, but there's a physicality to them because they are the sort of glass faces of the clock that you're building. So below the rondel part, which is the astrological part, you've got the actual clock, which is the times, and also the zodiac, which are all parts of this clock. And you have to build the faces of the actual clock, which are glass. And you're going to basically get these discs from these 2 marketplaces and place them into this central clock with the build action. And that gets you loads of points. That's where you're getting most of the points from the game. That's what you want to be doing. And one of the core logistical challenges is that in order to do that, you have to have a worker to place onto those discs as well. So you have to have enough workers to trigger all, like everything you want to do often requires you to place a worker. Like additionally, there are objectives you can complete. You have to put down a worker to take the objective. If you're going to do this clock face thing and you're going to capture area on this clock, you have to put a worker onto the dial you're placing. And additionally, you have to put a worker out to trigger the action in the first place. So to have a really big turn, you need 3 workers, right? And 2 of them you'll never get back. So you're constantly trying to unlock additional workers, and you're constantly trying to manage your worker pool. Because when you do the refresh, that's when you get to take all your workers back from that astrological part of the clock where you've been placing them to take actions. But if another player goes into the spot where you are, they ping that worker straight back to you, and then you bought a little bit more time before the refresh. Additionally, when you're grabbing these little tokens that fit into your player board in the pattern mini game I'm talking about, there's spots in there that let you pick workers back up off the board as well. So you can do that. So you could try to avoid taking a refresh turn for the whole game, and you're just doing stuff all the time. And that's probably going to feel great, but it might be very difficult. Certainly, refresh early on in the game doesn't feel too punishing, and in the late game, when there's only a few little glass bits left to do, it feels very punishing. There is a cost to these glass bits as well. So this build action, again, is this big thing. And accessing the build action is not too difficult, but just lining up all the things you need to do in order to do it can be a bit difficult. And it can be a bit painful for people who like to optimize, because whenever someone buys a tile because they've done a build action, everything gets more expensive in the grid because there's resources hidden underneath them. And as they're removed, the things that match up in the columns and rows within the grid where these things are kept, the marketplace, the grid, everything in the columns and rows gets more expensive. So you're like, I can finally do this next turn. And then someone buys a thing and now you need an extra ink pot. And you're like, oh, great. Now I'm screwed. So it is.
It's paint. It's paint.
Is it paint? Okay.
That's my contribution.
So it's got a lot of moving parts. It's got a lot of bits going on. It's got all of the sort of things you'd like to see from Euros. It's got this big chunky worker as well, who's sort of like a specialist. And what you can do with them is you can put them out. You can level them up on one of the tracks at the university. And then when you put them out, they go to one of these 4 special places. And just like the astrological worker placement part, if you kick off someone else's worker, they get it back. They get their special architect back. But that only has a little benefit, because when you play, the worker doesn't need to be placed from your play area. The special architect, or maybe they're not an architect, but that special worker, which can go to the 4 special places, can just jump between them. You can just move it around between them on your turn, but it can't repeat the action it's on. So that's the restriction there. So if someone kicks it back to you, you can repeat the action again next time if you wanted to do that. But the drawback is that each of these big sort of spaces it can go to have a high cost, usually in the deviation tokens. So you don't want to be doing it too much. You're going to blast through all your deviations and then get a big penalty when you refresh. With the exception of when you get your person to tier 3, and then suddenly you're actually refreshing deviations when you go there, which is massive. But, you know, it's your action, right? So you're placing that, you're getting some benefits, and then that's your turn. And so it moves around fairly quickly for one of these action comboing games. The actual turn-to-turn parsing is not too bad. Usually you're sitting there hoping someone doesn't take the thing you want and upset your plans. Although I got to say the player interaction is pretty low. Like generally, I thought actually that the proper clock face where we're vying for positions, there's this whole consideration there where if you can get the little dials and faces that are next to each other, so your workers are in a group, you get exponentially more points every time. But what I found certainly in the 4-player game, and to be fair, the number of available spaces adjusts, so this could be true at lower counts, but certainly in the 4-player game, we had sort of identified where good groups could be made, and then nobody allowed anyone to make a group. So we all just got the points for placing out a single thing every time. So we're all very effective at blocking each other and not effective at actually building groups. I think maybe we got like a 2-person group a couple of times, but that was it. It is, and so that's where I was hoping the player interaction would come out, right? I was hoping that we'd see sort of a bit more argy-bargy on that clock face, a little bit more consideration for where people are going or trying to block the groups that they're building. But the actual resource cost of the faces and people's ability to access them, because again, like there's actually a rondel within the market, and you can only buy the faces near the position of the piece on the rondel, and you can move it again using that blue track from the university, which is giving you a value. So there's some amount of manipulation over what you can and can't buy, but often the build action's so consequential that people are like, I'm just buying that one, because that's the one I can afford. That's the one near the piece at the time, and then putting it out and going, I can't put this anywhere near where I need to be. So I'll just block you or block someone else, or I don't even care. I'll just put it here. And I guess so the game ends when, I think when that face is done, when all those glass pieces are bought up. So
The game ends when the rooster hits the end.
So there are two end game conditions.
Sorry.
Yeah, I did forget about that one. And actually that does help with this point, because what I was going to say was that I think the reason why the rooster end game condition exists is because you could, if you were the kind of group that was really focused on min-maxing the points from these clock faces, it could go on forever, because it's just place your workers, get your workers, repeat. And so eventually the game will end because a certain number of, I think it's purchases of I'm trying to remember what advances the rooster. I think it's a number of refreshes on player boards. But
the rooster advances when either one of the rondelles hits a red tick.
That's right. So and those rondelles advance when people buy the Saints. So
that's it. It's buying the Saints, and it's also a refresh. That also moves.
Yeah. So there are a few number of triggers that will trigger the rooster advancing on the rooster track. Now, I'd point out in the 4-player game, we didn't come close to actually ending the game on the rooster. We ended it by buying up all the stuff in the build areas. And I think that there is real scope for people who are really reticent to sacrifice points there to maybe run out the rooster track, and that's probably why it exists. But I do think that fundamentally most tables are going to have people who are rushing to get those points from building the clock face and don't necessarily care about optimizing it perfectly because they're worried they're just going to miss out. And that's exactly what happened to us. We just built the whole clock, and then it was done. And we're like, okay, so someone's put out the last one, and then there's not much more you can do to get points after that. And so that we finish the round and the game ends, which is how it's supposed to work. So I think the rooster is just there to stop people maximizing all of those points by taking a huge number of turns to do that. But the Saints themselves are sort of a logistical mini game where you're collecting these windows, which I guess are attached to the building where the clock is or something. But you're collecting little window cards, which give you bonuses, and you're building a sort of a tableau of those. And then you get the Saints, and then you put them on. They come into your play area, and then you can put them onto the cards they're apprentices. No, I'm getting two mini games mixed up. You draft apprentices into your play area and put them into the windows to trigger benefits from the windows. You get the Saints, and you put them into the grid above your player board. Everyone's got their own little grid, which triggers asymmetrical bonuses in the grid. But the Saints everyone has their own unique set. I say unique. Everyone has their own set of Saints, and they're more or less matching colors and numbers. And those two cogs that turn tell you which Saint you're actually allowed to buy from your own set. So as you place them out, your options are more limited. You have to start paying tokens to move those cogs to set them up so you can get the actual Saints you're missing. And if you can complete that whole grid, or just even some rows and columns in that grid, it's big points. But what you're doing with these apprentices is you're setting up these window cards, which are asymmetrical in-game scoring conditions, I think, and then you need to turn them on with the apprentices. And when you turn them on with the apprentice, you get another benefit. So this is, again, the combo chaining thing. So, I think these are probably the hardest games for me to review, these sorts of games, because while I'm doing it, I'm sort of having fun batting at all the levers and pushing all the buttons, and things are happening and it's spitting stuff at me, and I've got my puzzle that I'm working on, and I'm like, if I can just line these things up, I'm gonna have a really good day. And then I'm like, oh no, someone's done a thing, and now the things aren't lining up and it's all going wrong, and oh no, now I'm gonna have to take a refresh turn at the worst possible time because I didn't have that worker I thought I'd have, because I thought I was going to put a Saint there, but then I pivoted at the last minute and I forgot why I was doing that thing earlier, and now I don't have the stuff I need. So it's exactly that experience, right? And I think we've probably all played games like that, probably quite a lot of them. And I don't necessarily think this is doing a lot of new stuff. I like a rondelle. The rondelle in this, I wish the workers were blocking each other or something. It feels odd that you can just kick people off. I found that generally speaking, we weren't really caring too much about kicking a worker back to somebody. It feels like there is potential, certainly in a lower player count, maybe, for you to look at someone and go, if they had one more worker, they can do the build action. And I don't want them to do that. So I'm definitely not kicking one of their workers back to them. But certainly in the...
I guess it's an attempt at positive, like a positive gameplay as opposed to negative gameplay. Instead of blocking, it's that you maybe instead of blocking people, you actually, if you want the space that if you want that same space, you actually have to help them a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that in practice it wasn't really much of a consideration, right? Like we were just like, that's the space I want, so I'm just going to take it regardless of who gets what back. And yeah, it is a bit of a pity, and I don't know how much of that's to do with the 4-player game where you're less interested in people's board states because there's so many turns between your turn and your next turn.
Yeah, it's a shame because I'm not super into rondels. I don't hate them or anything, but I'm fairly indifferent to them. They're not a mechanism I seek, but I thought this rondel system looked really nice.
Well, the other thing I found, which was really interesting, is I was almost always taking actions on the same side of the rondel. And I don't know if that was because people weren't investing too much in the blue track. They weren't using their tokens for that. But I found that there was one action that I really wanted that I was always a million miles away from. And those are also the build actions. So I was getting my build actions elsewhere, but the build action on the rondel, I think, only appears twice. And I was always finding when my turn would come around that it was not near enough the build action. Yeah, it only exists at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And I was always stuck somewhere around 12 or 6. I was like, this is terrible for me. But I could get those build actions from somewhere else. So it wasn't the end of the world. And I didn't score badly. I definitely didn't win this one. I actually think I came third. But also the margin was not a huge gulf. What was interesting as well is you can score a lot of points early on by being the first to things. You can score a lot of points by sort of building up endgame scoring conditions or completing the Saint tableau in front of you. So there's lots of points coming from every which way. And I'll note that the person who won and the person who's second won their points in completely different ways. The second place person had built up a huge lead by about halfway through the game. And the player who actually won it, I think, was down from their starting position at that point. So they made a huge climb up in the second half of the game, and a massive comeback in the end game scoring. So I think that also makes it quite difficult to gauge who's winning, but I also don't think there's much you can do about it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think, I think really I struggle to I think, so off the bat, two things I would say. One is if you just like this sort of thing, if you like this sort of puzzle with comboing and looking for opportunities and, everything you do is going to do something good. And really here, what you're just desperately trying not to do is run out of those workers or sort of manage that worker return rate. So you're not doing too many refreshes. But if you like this sort of thing, you'll like this one. It's another solid example of the genre. If you've got like some of these games already, if you've got Tilitum or if you've got Unconscious Minds, and I'm comparing it just to these because they're all sort of action comboing affairs, even though they have wildly different themes. Maybe this is a theme that really appeals to you. That's fair enough. Like, or if you've got Menifer, which is another one that sort of feels a bit like this. If you've been playing Covenant, which came out this year, I know a lot of people have that already. It's a very similar feel, again, mechanically, like thematically, all very different games. And I guess the one thing about Covenant is that it has a bit of luck in it. This is wholly deterministic. The only luck is coming from whether or not players kick your pieces back to you. And is that luck strategy? There's some heuristics, but I struggle to sort of because I quite like rondels, but in my mind, a rondel is also about I always think of the Matt Gertz rondels, where you have a piece on the rondel, and so you don't care about the other players. Well, you care about it insofar as you can see what actions they have available to them, but you're moving around the rondel at your pace. And really your determination is, do I advance really quickly so I can get back to the actions I need, or do I advance more slowly so that I don't miss out on something I might need in the future? Like this next step gets me something I don't need now, but if I need it in a turn and I've already passed that, I'm screwed. So, it's that sort of timing consideration. Whereas like here, particularly at 4 players, there was not a whole lot of planning you could do around the rondel. It was largely just seeing sort of what was available to you when your turn finally rolled around. And that could be a symptom of the 4-player mode. I think the rondel remains the exact same at any player count. So it just moves more slowly through its or through its rotation at lower player counts. There are less spaces, more of the clock is blocked off, so there's less to do in terms of building the clock face. But if you're sort of used to these kinds of puzzles, this will all seem quite familiar to you. And the one thing that was I was reminiscent of as well is that on the astrological clock, you have to advance the rondel at least one space on your turn. So it's always moving, which I think is quite a good restriction. But on the 2 devices that move around the marketplaces, you don't have to advance those one space. So it's got 2 functionally rotating rondels that are determining what's going to happen on your turn, and one of them has to move and one of them doesn't. And that's really important to remember, and I don't like that inconsistency.
Does it get an RSP thumbs up or thumbs down?
This is the sort of game that I find... This is a game that's very driven by the mechanical puzzle, right? And I know enough gamers, board gamers, who are into these sort of Rube Goldberg Euros, where you punch a thing and then a bunch of stuff comes out and you're like, oh. And I know enough people that really are into these puzzles to know that there's absolutely an audience for this. And it's also inoffensive in the sense that although there's a lot of rules overhead and it's a very sort of hobby learning experience to get into, you're not going to feel mean playing it. There's not table talk or anything like that. So it's going to be quite a sort of, a pleasant, puzzly experience for everyone involved. But for me, I need these games to offer something that makes them sort of stand out a bit more, right? And that can be presentation, that can be a specific mechanism, that can be theme. And again, like if you have a personal relationship with Orloj, then this might carry a lot more weight for you. Just like if Unconscious Mind was a game that you were really excited about because of Deborah's degree in psychology, right? So that's absolutely not inconsiderable. I was more excited about Covenant because I like the idea of dwarves digging a mine, and fighting orcs. Even though it is functionally an incredibly similar game to this, like just in terms of like Euro tracks, spin the Rube Goldberg, go up the tracks, get stuff coming out. Like, I really felt like playing Covenant and Orloj quite close together. I was like, wow, these are incredibly similar. There's so much similarity. It just in terms of sort of the underlying mechanisms under the hood that are driving these machines. Even though on the surface they look very different, it's like there's the contracts, there's the tracks, those are the tracks that trigger the thing. Here's how we're going to get the extra bonuses. There are the upgradable action spaces, Obviously the big difference here is the rondel. And I didn't think that the rondel actually was utilized well enough. I also felt like, I don't know why necessarily we have the deviation tokens, because I don't think players were incentivized to go up the blue track because going up any of the tracks is good, and all of them have an asymmetrical endgame scoring condition at the top. And if you pass a certain milestone on the track, you access that endgame scoring. If you pass a second milestone, you get full points for it. So you're sort of committing to the tracks not just for the in-game mechanical benefit, but for the end-game scoring benefit. But for whatever reason, we weren't really doing the blue track that much. And most of the time when people needed it to move, they'd just use their deviation tokens and then refresh them using the other mechanisms. So I would have liked to see maybe that track be more consequential, the blue track, or like feeling like moving because the problem with this combo game where there's so many options and there's so many things pouring out at you all the time, like it meant that the individual action spaces on the astrological clock, at least for me, did not feel as consequential as I would have liked. I think feeling like you could line those up by having upgraded the blue track and getting the perfect lineup so you could do some big thing, I think would feel really rewarding. But it felt like every single pair was quite good in some way. Like there was no bum pairs, and there was no bum pairings. Maybe there's like micro optimizations there. And I think players who are really into optimizing this kind of puzzle might find those micro optimizations very satisfying. But I think the majority of players are going to go, well, none of these are bad. So I've got 2 or 3 options. I'll just pick one of those,
Yeah. Yeah, this type of game often boils down to that. Which is nice in a way, but I guess it does take some of the jeopardy out.
Yeah, well, it's it's very pleasant, but it's not very tense. I guess the closest it gets to tense is at towards the end game where all these glass pieces are being bought or have been bought, and you're like, oh, I really hope I can buy another glass piece before the game runs out. But having said that, if you are doing saints on your saint board, then you'll be less interested in the glass pieces because lining up those rows and columns has in-game scoring on them as well. So you could just be doing that and then you don't even care because that's your own personal thing. It's not impacted by the other players. So, perfectly good Euro game, but just not. I'm trying to think in my head now of an example of something like a mechanism that really made one of these Euro games stand out for me. And like one of the ones I really enjoyed that I kept going back to is Tilitum. And I feel like maybe it's partly because I don't know, this is probably a personal thing. I just like the unpredictability of the dice in that. It's like, what's going to come up next? Who knows? We're going to roll the dice at the top of the round and randomly set something up. Who knows? And maybe I just need that little bit of extra excitement. And that's probably just a me thing. I'm sure for every player like me who's like, what are the dice going to say? You're going to get a player who's like, I hate this. I hate these dice. They never show what I want. I'm trying to play this Euro game and the dice just keep screwing me out of points.
Yeah, I find it's as often as it's one USP mechanism that makes something unique or stand out. It's often also just the way that familiarity is layered on top of familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the USP of Orloj, if it will be there for you, will be more that than a unique mechanism. I haven't played it yet, unfortunately. I do have a copy. I have set it up and with the hope of playing it, and then didn't get to. And I've read through the rules. And as I said, the thing I'm most excited for is, funnily enough, the rondel, which is a mechanism I'm not usually that enamored with. Having heard you talk about it, I'm still excited to try it, despite your misgivings.
Yep.
I do think the theme, despite the fact I've got no emotional attachment to Prague or its astronomical clock, never even been there. I do think that the theme is extremely evocative and exciting, and the way the presentation of the art from the box art to the board itself to the art it looks incredibly inviting, and it's got a wonderful table presence. It looks fantastic. And it depends on the individual. For me, that can do a lot of heavy lifting. So I think this definitely has potential to be a big hit with me. But I'll let you know when I've played it. If your misgivings have come through for me as well.
Well, I think for me, it's partly about where I find excitement, and I find a lot of excitement comes from, in these sorts of games, novel mechanisms or novelty, or because typically where I find excitement in games these days is from unpredictable player actions or unpredictable game systems like dice and card decks and things and I need a bit of that excitement, I think, to keep me sort of engaged. And like, for example, the Euro game that I've been playing a lot of lately is Civolution, with the Stefan Feld game that came out at Essen last year. And a lot of people bounce off that because they feel like the dice are too random. It's a complex Euro, and it demands quite a lot from you. And then at the end of the day, you're rolling like handfuls of dice round to round, and actions are so tight, and they cost 2 dice, and the numbers can just be like, oh, I thought I was going to do this strategy, and now I guess I'm pivoting to something completely different. And you have to be really tactical with it. But I find that that's super compelling. And this, I think, part of your experience with Orloj will be directly proportional to how many of these games you play, And what's interesting is that I know when I bring a game like this to my game group, I'll always be able to get it to the table. There's always an appetite for that. There's a couple of players who play this kind of thing all the time, and they're always ready to sign up for the next one. But they don't ever request I bring one back. They're kind of like, I'm happy to do this thing, but they could sort of be interchangeable. And I'm kind of reminded of Phoenix New Dawn, which was the Paraloka game we played last year, which had some more novel elements, mathematical elements in it. But again, it's sort of very predictable, and it's got these endgame scoring conditions that are established quite early on and are hugely consequential. And so these felt better than that, I guess, to an extent. I don't know why I brought it up. Maybe I'll cut that out. But
I know what you mean, though. That there's a lot of games that I think it is when you get deep enough into the hobby, that a lot of these types of games, they are kind of one-hit wonders almost. Like, you're excited to play it and you even enjoy playing it, but then you're kind of on to the next thing because it just doesn't have the staying power. It is rare that a game like this kind of stands the test of time with me these days.
Yeah.
And that's possibly a consumerism issue as much as it is a game. A game,
Yeah, I think there's always a sort of a market. Issue. Yeah, I think it is a game design issue, because I think fundamentally, if we think about replayability, and replayability comes from like sort of, I think, 3 core elements, and one is mastery, right? And this is the ability to feel like you're getting better every time you play. And then the other 2 elements, one is like sort of discovery, and that can be discovering new cards, new elements of the game you didn't see before. That a lot of like sort of the cooperative adventure games and things deliver a lot on discovery, or Vantage is only discovery. That's all there is to it. And actually, because it's very set, that discovery could evaporate quite quickly if you played a lot. But the other one is the table, right? The players at the table. They're a huge variable. And if the game has a lot of player interaction, relies a lot on player interaction, the game can surprise you every time. And additionally, the inverse is true. If you play with the same group constantly, you develop this sort of inbuilt meta for your group, and then that keeps it replayable, because you're like, oh, so-and-so always does this, so-and-so always does that, but now I'm going to predict they're going to do that, and I'm going to counter it here. And they're like, oh, but I saw that you were going to predict the counter to the thing that I'm doing, so now I'm going to do something else. And that keeps it exciting and surprising. Oh, they didn't do the thing I thought they were going to do, and now I'm doing the thing that counters the thing they're doing, but they're doing something else. And so getting those metas and keeping it surprising and unexpected, that adds a lot of replayability. And I think the problem with a lot of these combo style games is that often mastery comes from micro optimizations. It's sort of, oftentimes as well, it's identifying efficiencies early on the board. Like, oh, the objectives that all score for the blue track came out this time, so I'm going to focus on the blue track. Or the objective at the top of the pink track is the same as the objective here on my Saints board, so I'm going to really focus on that thing. And then you just spend the rest of the game sort of optimizing towards those strategies and then delivering on them. And you're like, well, I got a better score than last time because either these things lined up better from the setup, or I'm just better at identifying where they are. But some people, I think, find that kind of micro optimization really satisfying, but I don't think most people find that's a satisfying fulfillment of mastery in the same way like getting good at something like chess is, right?
I mean, chess obviously is a very particular example, but I understand what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's sort of learning moves and learning, and there's a lot of board games that deliver on that sort of type of mastery. I think. So the point is, I had a good time spinning the wheels of Orloj. For me personally, I don't think I'm going to keep it around for too much longer, but that's mainly because I'm played too many games and I'm burnt out on familiar mechanisms. But you're right. The presentation's really nice. It looks good. It's very colorful. There's no major problems with the iconography. There's a little bit of those wrinkles in the consistency of the mechanisms that I wish meant I didn't have to think about that. But to be fair, I didn't have a problem remembering that. It was the rest of the table that did. Which is why I identified it. But let's move on. Let's move on to a game that is definitely got an exciting new novelty. So I'm excited to hear about it.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is Pulitzer by David Vaquero, art by Juan David Vargas, and published by Transit Games. Is that pronunciation? I don't think David's designed anything I've played before. He's designed Pizza Express, which I haven't played, Silent Sea Zombie City. Don't think Mike, have you played any of those?
I have not.
No. So, but so this is also this seems quite far out of the David's usual wheelhouse. It says it plays in 60 to 120 minutes. It took us about 2 hours to for me to teach it and play it at two players. I have played it once at two player. It's a 2.88 weight, which I think is about right. If I was asked to pick a whole number, I would have plonked for a 3. I think it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit simpler than it seems to be at first glance. But for example, when we were given the rules overview at the novelty show, I definitely walked away thinking it was far more complex than it is. But it's actually not as heavy as one might think. It's worth noting briefly that the rulebook translation, the English translation, is quite poor. We did actually that we did catch at least one. I think there might have been two. Actually, I can recall flat out incorrect translations that fundamentally altered the meaning of the sentence completely and would have you setting the game up incorrectly. We fortunately the pictures that they had accompanying it therefore didn't make sense. So with a bit of bad reading of Spanish, we managed to work out what it was actually saying. We managed to get the correct translation from the Spanish and make it make sense.
This is why.
So it's worth noting
this is why you always put pictures in the rulebook. As many pictures as possible. Yeah. You can't have too many pictures in the rulebook, and they can't be mistranslated. Also, don't hide rules in the example text. I hate that. Anyway.
I know, right? They do that. I don't know if they don't think Pulitzer doesn't do that, but I've seen. Yes, I agree. I've seen games do that. It's also why you hire localizers and
don't just punch it into ChatGPT or Google Translate. Okay, hire a speaker.
That's a topic of conversation for perhaps another episode of the podcast. I do have
strong feelings on this one.
Well, there was some controversy not too long ago with the publisher who sought free translations from their community in a way that I did not appreciate. But we'll get into that another day if we can. But anyway, so this is ultimately a competitive but not overly punishing worker placement game. And what I mean by that is so it is competitive. It's not cooperative, but what I mean by it's competitive in term for the worker placement spaces, but it's not overly punishing. So you are playing as a journalist who works for a newspaper. Your ultimate ambition is to one day win the Pulitzer Prize. During your worker placement, you're going to be both writing your everyday stories, your world news, your local news, your sports, your entertainment news, to keeping your day job, whilst also pursuing that one big scoop that's going to win you the Pulitzer Prize. So you have, for example, you have the worker spaces that represent writing those daily news pieces in those categories I mentioned. When you place your work into those spaces, you immediately generate the income. You also will get bonuses at the end of a round based on the rows and columns of which you have the majority. It's worth noting at this point that the workers have different values assigned to them, and you place them face down. So whilst everyone knows you're in that space, they don't know what value worker you've assigned to that space. The game's played over the course of I forgot how many rounds it is. 7 rounds?
6 then.
6, yes. It's a set number of rounds though, which is 6 because I'm always one too high. When I explain the 2-player variant, you will understand why I can't remember how many rounds it is. So and each round ends when every player is passed.
It says 8 rounds. It says 8. You were one too low this time.
Oh, I was one too low this time. Oh my goodness. I'm always one out. That's the new rule. Plus or minus 1 when I say a number. So yeah, so at the end of the round, for example, in this first that worker's placement area, you'll in the row the columns rather give you bonuses, such as a context, various forms of resources and things that you can use in the short to medium term, and the rows give you what is called reach. So you basically take houses of different colors from that of red, white, blue, and yellow, and that they represent your reach your journalistic reach. So what kind of demographics you're reaching. So it's quite a nice thematic implementation. I mean, if you it's you are you reaching you're reaching conservatives, you're reaching liberals, you're reaching green people who are motivated just to use political leanings as a benchmark, and that's a nice little set collection for points at the end of the game. So that's it's nice little one way you can score implementation, thematic implementation of how many different how wide demographic you are reaching with your news. Moving and the market, how much money you get for each different type of news story is also alters every round. There's a little deck of cards that changes. So this round, world news is very valuable to publish a story about, whereas entertainment news people don't care about it so much. Next round, maybe celebrity traders is on, so everyone wants to read about entertainment, so it jumps up in value. That same deck of cards, the back of it also blocks off some of the spaces at the top of the board, which I'll mention in a minute. But the main thing of the main slots, however, are the bus slots, which I guess represent going off on the bus to try and grab your scoops. These workers' placement slots you have to pay to go to, so that's why you get the money immediately for writing your news articles in the lower spot. You pay to place your workers on the bus, again face down, so no one knows how valuable a piece you put there. And those spaces, the more valuable space you take by paying more money, the more cards you're going to get to flip when it comes to pursuing your scoop. There's also a archive office where you can send a worker to support the person who's on the bus. That basically allows them to draw even more cards. Um, there's an overtime space, which is basically trying to it's just basic cards that give you various things. It might be money, it might be a contact, it might be again the ability to flip an extra card. And then the top area is an area which I'm trying to remember what it's called. Is it called? No, it's not called favors. It's called. Oh, what's it called? Basically, it represents you uh, doing other miscellaneous things in the newspaper. For example, one of them is training up a new worker. You have a worker who is marked with an X, and the value you unlock that worker by I think it's called, I think we called him the intern. You unlock that worker through one of these spaces, and you subsequently can upgrade his value with the same spaces. You can also get things like contact tokens up there, or there's a chit you can get there which lets you place two workers in one go. They're basically getting you powers and various other things. It's also worth noting that there are two different types of workers. I don't just mean the X worker. You have your regular workers, and you also have this is why I was unfortunate I can't remember the name of them, but you have these other two types of workers, which are cardboard pieces, which are the pieces you place to get these benefits that I just talked about. However, you can only place those if you still have actual workers left. So if you want to race out and be the first into a bunch of different spaces, you can absolutely do that, but you could potentially miss out on placing both one or even both of these other. They're called requests. I think that's what it is. Requests. They're making requests to your manager essentially for something.
So they're a bit like bonus actions you can use so long as you have workers left.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like in Blood Rage, how you have to have rage in order to do free actions, right? Even if it doesn't cost any rage. So yeah, so you can prioritize. I think it's 5 workers you have before you get the so 4 or 6 before you take the X worker. And as I say, you can grab valuable work spaces that you deem to be very valuable to you, and forgo those request tokens, or you can place the request tokens before you run out of workers. Um, So that's the worker placement slot. I've covered the bonuses in the bottom. It's worth noting that some of the worker placement areas, the value of the worker impacts how powerful the ability is going to be. For example, in some instances, it influences the majority for the columns and the rows in the first area, in the writing area. Um, but in some areas, it can determine whether you get to do an action at all. Insofar as them in the overtime position, for example, let's say I can't remember the exact number. There's 4 spaces, and only the first 3 will actually get to do the action at all. The last action won't get to do it, and may even suffer a penalty. And it's determined by, so obviously you place them in the order of placement, and that is the tiebreaker if you have the same value, whoever placed first. But when you flip them over, you actually rearrange the workers based on the value of the worker. So I quite like that. I like it has different types of workers, which is something I really like. For example, like in Anachrony, I really like the different types of workers where any worker can do anything, but you get a benefit for saying the right type of worker. Not quite as involved as that, but the fact that you have those request tokens and the different workers with the different values gives you a little bit of that flavor of different types of workers.
I was just thinking it was quite reminiscent of Luthier, actually. Because they have got the hidden workers with the different numerical values.
Oh yes, they do. Yes, and Tricarion as well, which is what Luthier made me think of. Yeah. Is when in Luthier, do you place them face down?
Yep, you do. Yeah, you place them face down, and then everyone reveals them.
No, okay. It's not even that long since I played that. My memory's going in my old age.
Together, we keep each other on track together.
Exactly.
Between the two of us, we remember a game.
So the real meat and potatoes, though, of it then comes from this bus area where you're going out to get your scoop, and that brings us on to the novelty that Mike referenced at the start of the section, which is that the Pulitzer comes with 5, because it's up to 5 players, isn't it?
Yep.
Cork boards, essentially, and it comes with a bag of pins, and it comes with 5 strings, and you are essentially plotting when you see people, what's that meme?
I was about to say, this is the Pepe Sylvia meme. If you know the Pepe Sylvia meme, then this is that, but more reasonable, less manic.
So at the start of the game, you'll also have been given a card which shows you the different specifics. The board has 5 columns, A, B, C, D. In the middle, you've got a non-denominational row, which is called X. Column, I should say. And then and the rows are insignificant. And then it's got various symbols. It's got various pieces of evidence like Polaroid photographs, maps, cassette tapes. Whatever else you could think of.
There's blueprints, post-its. A big, I don't know, question mark thing. There's little folders and folios.
The question mark's your start. That's your starting.
That's your starting position. Yeah, that's right. I can see it is here as well. There's Polaroids as well that you mentioned. There's what looks like an office key card, ID card, and a Manila folder as well. Of course, got to have a Manila folder.
And you will have been told specific. They're all the same. Their layout. And you'll have been given an objective card which tells you to find these specific pieces of evidence in these specific area, like exactly this area, like A3, the Polaroid, or B6, it's only 5 down, B5, the map. That's ultimately what you're trying to do. Your string is as long, how long is a piece of string? Well, it has exact length, and if you run out of string, you can't get any more evidence. You will get points for every piece of evidence you collect, but you need to collect. There's actually 2 variants you can choose to play with. You can choose to play with a variant with the main version, where you must find 5 of the highlighted pieces of evidence that you were meant to find to be eligible to win the game. And there's a more forgiving version where you don't need to find those 5, but finding those 5 gives you a significant score bonus. And the way you do this is that main area, action area I was talking about, where the value of the worker combined with the value of the space you went to lets you flip a certain number of cards that represent the columns. The columns, the A, B, C, or D, and another set of cards which represent the different pieces of evidence, i.e. blueprints, Polaroids, folder, etc. And the value of the worker is how many spaces orthogonally you can move from your last pin. So if you get a good space and a good worker, you may have a lot of flexibility. You might flip over 2 of each card, and you've got huge flexibility. I mean, like, oh, I can go to a folder or a Polaroid or a cassette or a blueprint in rows in columns A, B, or D, and I can move 4 spaces. Huge flexibility. Or you might be in a position where I can literally have a post-it note in B, and it has to be, and if it's not within 2 spaces of my last pin, I'm sunk. And to a large extent, that is up to you. It's you can take a risk, or you can put more resources into making sure you can definitely get value out of it. As I said, you can take use pin a piece of evidence that is not actually on your objective list, and it will still be worth points to you in the game. But obviously, the length of the string is an issue. It does come into play. It definitely isn't just it isn't just there for sensationalism, or for the elevator pitch. It definitely matters. Deborah actually ended up foregoing pieces of evidence because she was so desperately trying to get her 5th piece of evidence that she specifically needed. She was worried that she was going to run out of string.
So if you want to improve your score, bring a long piece of red string. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and cheat. Yeah, exactly. I think cheat in any game basically is technically good advice if you want to win. If you want to go down that route. But yeah, so and I said the archive, you can place a work in the archives, which helps with that as well, which it can help you draw extra cards. So that's essentially the moment-to-moment gameplay. That is how it works. The So I mean, obviously the cork board toy aspect is very cool and fun. It's not actually. It is ultimately pointless. It could be represented in you could just be collecting cards. It doesn't need to exist whatsoever.
Well, surely the string is consequential, right? You're saying that they were concerned about the length of the string.
Yeah, but it can be represented by the inability to have more than 6 cards. I don't know. It's not necessary, but it is a very fun. I'm not poo-pooing it whatsoever. I'm just being matter of fact about it. I really like that the cork board. It's very, very fun. It's very thematic, and therefore it's very engaging, and it's very, what's the word? Not engaging. I mean, it is engaging, but it's
evocative.
Yeah, it's evocative of the theme. Exactly. It's what's the opposite of ludonarrative dissonance?
Oh,
it's narratively cohesive.
You heard it here first, folks. This is our new concept.
I've coined the phrase ludonarrative cohesion. Yeah. So the 2-player version has some significant changes, which are, so I'm actually quite impressed by how well thought out they are, insofar as they haven't just been like, right, this is the problem, the quick fix, as often is the case. They've actually put in a full new mechanism where there are government agents trying to stop you from finding out government secrets.
That's fun.
There are basically red and blue meeples, which I guess are they're basically filling the role of a dummy player in a way, but it's so much more than that, frankly. They are placed according that you roll 2d6 to place them into that bottom area I was talking about, where you get the money and where you compete for benefits on the columns and reach points on the rows. I think it's the red ones are face down or stay face down. The blue ones flip face up after they've been placed. Mm-hmm. As I said, there's an element of randomness to where they're placed, but also an element of order. Insofar as you alternate the colors, but you leave blank space on the dice. And then they are also competing for the rows and the columns. In the 2-player version, there is no reach. You don't score points for those houses. There's no game there. Instead, you're collectively competing, the 2 players, with the government agents for the rows. And the way it works is there's 3 rows only in a 2-player game instead of the usual 4. And if the players win the row, then then there's a track where trust in the press increases, and if the agents win the row, then trust in the press falls. and instead trust in the government increases. And basically, what it is essentially it blocks off spaces like a dummy player does, and it also means that you actually it doesn't fully block off players. You can go where agents are, but you have to place a higher value meeple than theirs, otherwise they'll kick you out. And you know what the blue ones are, but you don't know what the red ones are. So it blocks off spaces to a certain extent, like a dummy player does, and it also adds this very minor cooperative aspect because if the game can end in two additional ways. If the trust in the press reaches all the way to the right, if the press is fully trusted, the game ends because well done, I guess. Everyone trusts you. But the game ends prematurely, and whoever has the most points wins. But if the opposite happens, if faith in the press is completely lost, then the game ends and you all lose. There is no winner. It's a collective loss. So it's sort of a cooperative. So you got a little bit of a tug of war, so to speak, in terms of the classic thing of I want to make this your problem, but if I'm winning, it's more my problem than it is your problem because I'm more incentivized to keep the game going. So it's a full-on new system, frankly, and there's another caveat. This is why I forgot how many rounds are in it, where you play 5. I think it's 5, so 4 or 6. You play 5 rounds for free, back at 5 turns each, and then whoever's the starting player can choose to take a 6th action or not. And if they take 6th action, the other player gets 6th action, and again they can choose to take a 7th action or not. And again, if they do, the other person gets 7th action. And every time you take an action over 5, up to the maximum, I think 7 is the maximum. The agents who are on the bus locations, which is the go out to interact with the corkboard, they get to draw extra cards. Because they're drawing cards to destroy evidence. So when you destroying evidence is a concept that exists in the game already, but not in the regular game. You might destroy a couple of pieces of evidence throughout the course of the game. In this, you destroy constantly, and if ever you destroy a piece of evidence which now makes it impossible for you to get your 5 pieces of mandatory evidence, the game ends and you lost.
the government destroyed everything.
Yeah, or at least enough that you can't win your Pulitzer anyway. But if the other player could still conceivably win the game, then they win. The game's over and they win. Even if they were never going to, even if realistically it wasn't going to happen if it was possible. So it adds this whole other aspect, which I actually thought worked really well, apart from one issue, which is that the archives section is gone. That's the section which lets you buff the people who are in the field hunting for the scoops. I think the reason it was removed is because you have fewer workers, and that you needed to focus on. You basically couldn't. Sorry, apologies. Don't have fewer workers. You need to focus more on the bottom area to prevent the government agents from destroying the trust in the press. So they needed to remove. They basically looked at the board and said, we need to remove an area. This one is the least consequential. However, that area, the archives, is the luck mitigation, or it's the main source of luck mitigation. It's 95% of the possible luck mitigation for the flipping of cards. And in our game, I was fine. I got lucky, and Deborah did not. And she was like this. She felt completely out of control with that, like that she hadn't got control or agency over that. And I said to her, "Well, funnily you say that. In the 3 or more player game, there is something you can do about that." So it's funny that it removes that luck mitigation. It's not a good. It's simultaneously one of the most impressive 2-player variants I've seen, but with this one glaring issue, which did spoil the game somewhat for Deb, which is a shame. So overall, my impressions of it, though, I mean, some of what I'm saying, I'm intuiting some of it from my 2-player experience, having already said that makes quite significant changes. It doesn't take anything away from the 3-player game other than that archive space, though. It is ultimately, however, I think it's got a good theme, great gimmick, very cool gimmick. but again, it doesn't do anything meaningful that's new, I think, either. I was a little, I enjoyed it. I am actually quite eager to play it with more than
Mhm.
two. But I have become a little cold on it on reflection. Not on reflection even, just obviously you're on a high after playing a game and indeed winning
Mhm.
it, and you enjoyed your new toy, and just with a bit of space between it, I'm like, yay! I mean, I just not cold isn't the word, but just a little bit of time and space between me and the play. Kind of similar to, I guess, similar to your feeling on Orloj, just kind of what really has this done to earn a place in my collection. I found that I more or less always had enough workers and time to do all the things I wanted to do. Like I said, that's why I said it's competitive but not overly punishing worker placement. You might miss out on optimization, but you'll always be able to get what you want to do for the most part. That will change in a 3 and 4 player game, but I don't think it will. And if I indeed a 5 player, I think five might be too many actually. But the more spaces open up, there are more obviously to compensate. Um, so whilst I do trust that the worker placement space economy will get that a little bit tighter, it's not going to be tight enough to be of a major concern. Um,
Mhm.
things like the bottom that the workers who write the articles giving the immediate benefit of money so that you can do more stuff with this turn, but then also building towards a end game bonus, an end of round bonus, and an end of game scoring bonus. That's all really nice. It's funny because I said in response to what you said about Orloj
Mhm.
that it doesn't have to be a new novel thing. It doesn't have to be a new mechanism. It can also just be layering of familiar in a new interesting way, and it does do that to some extent. And it has this fun gimmick. And it just isn't quite enough, or at least not after this one play.
Mhm. Yeah, I can get that. I mean, I think, with these sorts of Euro style games, it's always hard to sort of pinpoint maybe the one element that sort of sets it out, but sometimes it can just be that's really tight, or that was just, really refined, or it felt well tested, or it felt like, for me, often it's about the strategic horizons, like, to come back to Orloj, I'm doing all the mini games, and maybe I didn't do the Saints as much as I did the Glass Clock Face, and I saw both be successful. But fundamentally, I've identified the sort of the four things you do, and each game it's going to be a little mixture of those four things. But I like to see I like to see broad options that remain viable as well, Anyway, my point is simply that it can often be like, just with Euro games, it's subtleties under the hood that can be quite hard to pinpoint, but you're like, that felt really good.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And you've kind of inspired another point there, which is that you are ultimately doing you really got you've one main source of points, be it because you have to get your 5 pieces of evidence because you're playing the variant where you literally need to do that to be eligible to win, or just because that's the best source of points. That cork board is by far the best source of points in the other variant. As I said, you can get points for the reach, not in the two-player game, but you get, I think, I can't remember, you get a couple of points for each house, and then you get I think it's bonus 10 points for every set of 4 houses you have. That's not insignificant, far from it, but it still pales in comparison to the corkboard points. You can get a handful of points from other things, like the overtime might give you some points. If you train your worker, the X worker, up all the way, it gets you a few points as well. There are other sources of points, but ultimately you have to 100. Everyone is ultimately focused on one worker placement slot, or area
Mm-hmm.
rather, which actually kind of I suppose counters. So I guess rather than it not being super competitive in terms of worker placement slots, one area is going to be very competitive because everyone needs to go here, and the others are going to be much more easygoing. Um, yeah, it's so you haven't got that multiple avenues
Mm-hmm.
like you do in all others. You can't do the apostles or the apprentices or a bit of both. Everyone has to go hard on the corkboard. You just have to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd be interested, I suppose, to see if you play with the variant where you didn't have to get the 5 pieces of evidence to be eligible to win, could you win by going super hard into reach? I mean, that'd be a fun thematic question as well. Like, one person's pushing for the Pulitzer, and you just focus on writing great daily news articles.
Yeah.
Can you win doing that? I wonder.
Well, if you ever manage to get it back to the table at the 3 and 4 player count, you'll have to let us know what you find out.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do that fairly soon, and I will let you know.
Okay, so from Pulitzer Prizes to pawns, why don't you tell us about the new thematic Uwe Rosenberg?
They're both peas. Did you say new thematic Uwe Rosenberg?
Yeah, I was being a bit facetious.
It has a theme.
It has a theme, it's true.
So this is Garden Lake. Garden Lake is, as Mike spoiled for us, by Uwe Rosenberg with art by Jindrik Pavlaskic. Published by Albi. You'll know Uwe Rosenberg from his many farm simulators and polyomino games. This is one of the latter. It is a classic polyomino Rosenberg style game with a new and pleasant theme. The real USP here, however, is that theme is making a pond in a garden. The real kind of it claims to be 60 minutes. It is not. It can be. It could be. I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me if they'd said 45 to 60 minutes, because it absolutely could be. But we'll get on to that in a minute. It says 1.67 weight on BGG. This opens up the classic discussion of how you do define weight. I think that's actually probably fairly accurate in terms of. It's definitely accurate in terms of rules overhead. It's about 1.5 probably. In terms of cerebral load, it's probably a 79 out of 5. I'm being flippant. It's a lot more on the it takes a lot of cognitive load though for optimize. If you want to optimize, that's kind of the issue at the time. I played it once at 4. As I was getting on to say, the real unique selling point here in relation to one of Rosenberg's polyomino game is the player interaction with regards to the pieces you're able to take. Polyomino games essentially they usually involves drafting a polyomino piece, and placing it into a grid and trying to lay them out in an optimal way. In this one, you have, I think it's 16 tiles in a inverted U shape around your player board, and every other player has that as well. At any given time, you have access to the 2 at the end of your U, as well as you have access to the piece essentially on either side closest to you, of the player on either side of you, their piece closest to you. So the player sat to your left, you have access to the bottom right of their inverted U, and the player sat to your right, you have the access to the bottom left of their inverted U. So you'll always have 4 pieces available, and you'll always have access to pieces that other players also have access to you. If you're playing with 4 players, there'll be 1 player you're not interacting with whatsoever. However, it does introduce exceptionally meaningful and significant and player interaction with significant consequences to one of these solitaire, what is traditionally a solitaire multiplayer game. This style of game is traditionally a solitaire multiplayer game.
Yeah, I was going to say that market is vaguely reminiscent of Patchwork, because that's also kind of a circle that you move through.
Yeah, but Patchwork, it's just you have access to the next 3. You impact
a certain number along the line, right?
Yeah, so which one you take does impact which ones the opponent has available to them, but not the same. It's not quite the same level of consequence. You're still mostly driven by what you want. It in Patchwork. You can potentially take something slightly you're less keen on to avoid giving access to something further along to your opponent, but it's not super important in my experience. Here for example, one of the ones that myself and the player to my right had access to on his board, neither of us wanted, and we just wouldn't take it, and it locked up his side. And eventually I took it, and it gave him access, and that was a significant moment in the game.
That's really interesting.
However, in my opinion, this game is simply too cerebral without being crunchy enough.
Interesting.
Now, I'm a big fan of Rosenberg. I'm a big fan of polyomino games, even though I'm bad at them. And and like I love Patchwork, and I kind of I always what I'm trying I'm at the point with Rosenberg Polyomino games where I can't even remember the names of any of them because there's so many,
Yeah, I could
and
start
I've played
listing them, but
almost
what's
all
the
of them.
point?
List a couple there because I've genuinely forgotten all the names. I think I own
Well,
all of them.
they range obviously from
Feast for Odin.
yeah, Feast for Odin at the sort of mega end, all the way down. You've got your Cottage Garden. You've got
Oh,
uh
there you go. That's yeah. Spring Meadow, Indian Summer. That
mhm,
was the trio I couldn't remember any of.
yeah.
So I enjoy all of those. But yeah, this one's just too cerebral. It took us 2 hours.
Hmm.
It was far too long. Um, it is good. Furthermore, the USP is actually it's great. I think the USP the drafting system is exceptionally good. I love when solitaire multiplayer games throw in meaningful player interaction
Hmm.
above simply racing for an objective. But I think Rosenberg needs to try again and implement this USP into another game because it's just too long and tedious, unfortunately. Um, the scoring basically all you're doing is you're taking the pieces, you're placing your grid, you get points for every row and column, at 1 point per row and column at the end of the game. Um, you also get when you complete a row or column, you get a bonus tile which you can place. You're also got this koi fish, I think they are, and lily
Hmm.
pads, and you're trying to assemble groups of 7 of each of those. So you want to, sorry, 7 or more, because basically you score 2 points for every group of things that are the same, lilies or koi fish. Um, you score 2 points for each group as long as the group has 7 or more, but it doesn't matter if the group has 7 or 107, it's just worth 2 points.
Hmm.
So that sounds incredibly simple, and it is, but making sure you've got lots of little groups and not never join them together
Hmm.
is mind not my
Well,
not mind numbing, which I nearly said. It's mind
yeah,
melting.
I mean, I
Um,
think we had that same experience playing Wispwood where we were like sort of resetting our boards and then going, "Oh, I need to not join these up," and it's surprisingly
yeah,
difficult to
similar
avoid
to
that.
that. There's also these decorations pieces, like a nice little bridge or something, which you get. So they're pre-outlined on the board, and there are different inserts to the board, so you can play with slightly different variants.
Hmm.
Um, and if you basically you want to perfectly go around this shape, this what's a pre-printed polyomino shape. If you ever cover up any of it, you've lost your opportunity. If you can perfectly go around it, you then get to take that decoration from the supply and it goes in for free. So you've just gotten a bunch of spaces filled for free essentially as a bonus. If there's other space, there's other areas that you do want to cover up, then you get a bonus piece. And as I said, if you completing a row or a column gets you another bonus piece associated with that row or I think every 4 rows and every there's like these 4 rows, completing any of those rows will get you this bonus piece and so on. And as I said, the points are just rows, 1 point for a row and a column, and 2 points for each cluster of fish or pads. That's it. That is it. But trying to optimize those clusters of lilies and fish whilst trying to make sure you go around the decoration outlines but never on them. It's whilst making whilst getting your finishing off your whilst just engaging with the typical challenge of polyominoes. With limit, it's just so difficult. I mean, you could play this in 45 minutes if you played with people who just refuse to AP. We did not. And yeah, it's just. I mean, you could say, look, this is a potentially user issue. Um,
Hmm.
but it was not just me. Deborah kind of hesitantly, kind of not hesitantly, but like, what's the word? Kind of coyly was like, so what did you think of Garden Lake? And she had exactly the same
Hmm.
experience, that it was just too much. It was too, as I said, too cerebral without being crunchy enough. Um, so yeah, it is a good game. It is well designed, and it isn't this is arguably an unfair criticism. It's not Uwe Rosenberg's fault that we took too long to play it. You absolutely could play this in 60 minutes or indeed less. Um, but I don't think you'd be engaging with it to the degree that Rosenberg would like you to. If you, I mean, obviously I'm putting words in the man's mouth here, but I don't think you'd be engaging with it, quote unquote, correctly.
Hmm.
If you played at that speed. And that's a great shame.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just wanted to just grasp something about the U shape for the drafting of the polyominoes, and you can
Mhm.
take from the outsides of your U or from the side closest to you on from either neighbor, but and then you move around the U, and at some point does it get refreshed?
So you don't move around the U. If I take the space, the bottom right of my inverted U, then the next one is obviously now the bottom right. So that's
Yeah,
now available to
that's
me
what I
and the
meant. You
player on my
move
right.
into the middle, right? You move into the dip.
Yeah, yeah, and you do. So you will only need to refresh barely at the end, and only if it's been uneven in how people have been taking, which did happen. I can't remember exactly what the refresh rules are, but basically you end up taking one from your neighbor and putting it into your selection if you come down to one, and then if but you can't do that if it would mean they'd only have if they have got fewer a certain number, and if that happens, then you take one from the bag. I think
Oh,
I
okay, it
can't
doesn't really
exactly
matter. I
remember.
guess what I was trying to
Yeah,
establish was it ever refreshed? And the answer is not
yeah. There's
really.
there's actually a two-step process. Do if you're down to one, do this. If this is impossible because of this, then do
But
this.
generally
And it
speaking,
did come up.
between all the polyominoes, it's kind of expected that you should have roughly enough out on the table at the start to finish your
Yeah,
tableaus.
exactly.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting, interesting. God, yeah, that's also hell for cognitive load because you can look at what you've got available and look at what they've got available and you can plan, but you might just be waiting. And is there some kind of placement restriction as well? Like you have to be adjacent to the existing pieces.
Yes. So no, sorry, no. You can place anywhere. No, sorry.
So
Yeah, you can place absolutely
any
anywhere.
polyomino could just go anywhere within in the
Yeah,
grid.
yeah,
That's almost worse.
yeah. It's almost worse. It's probably one of the major contributing factors to the EP.
Right, because people can just go. It's funny. I'm
Because there
looking.
is, especially early in the game, because if you place one piece and now I've got four tiles that I can obviously flip and rotate, but they have to ultimately have to go next to this piece. That's significantly less to these four can go anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah. Do they have to touch an
Uh,
edge, or could you just put them in the middle?
I'm pretty sure you can just put it in the middle.
God, that's so weird. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that sounds. I mean, I guess if you're really into Calico and you just like these sort of spatial puzzle, obviously it's not polyominoes, but the same idea, right? Like spatial puzzle with a lot of cognitive load. This sounds like it might be in your wheelhouse. But yeah, like, I don't. 30 minutes per player is what you're telling me. So
I've just double checked. Yeah, you can place them anywhere. I was correct.
that's crazy. That's so much.
I know, and actually talking it through with you now is the first time I've actually kind of really understood why this took so long. Because, and I've alluded to things like the bonus tiles, but what I like, for example, I remember a time where because some of the bonus tiles you get are like single squares to fill in gaps, which is very helpful, obviously. I remember a time when I was literally just desperately trying to be okay. If I place this, I need to find a way so I can place this to complete this row, so I get this bonus tile, so I can fill in this space here, which will get me access to this one piece, which will finally finish off this koi pond, but also finish this row, which will get me. And so, like, you're trying to pre-plan like a really like a multi-layered turn, and everyone's just waiting for you to do it, and you're just like, how do I make this work? It just there's so many other facets that can come into just one tile placement. Um, so as the game, as the your options decrease because you're filling your board, options decrease in that one sense. Your options are increasing in the sense that now you're closer to finishing rows and columns and bonus pieces and getting decorations sorted. So it never goes. It stays the same level. Ultimately, you've got the same level of AP throughout the entire game, and it's just, as I said, technically it's user error. Technically it is, but it
Well,
was a unanimous
yeah,
experience.
but I think turn to turn cognitive load is also like a real it's a design consideration as well. Like if you know, you can argue that my niche is, people who play a lot of this genre and so who are going to be really good at it. Like this is the tile laying game for people that are so into it, they bang out, like Calico in like 15 minutes, and they're just like zip zap zap
Yeah.
zap zap done. And they need some escalation, right? Now, for a start, this does not present itself as a very heavy game. This looks like a light, approachable game. So already thematically and presentation wise, it's a little misleading if it's got that much cognitive load. But the second thing is like, it's just it's just lying on the box, isn't it? You know, if it says 60
But
minutes.
I mean, I'd be very interested to see how other people's experience of this, because like I said, you could play this in less than 60 minutes. You absolutely could, and it's not complicated, and I think he's done a really good job in terms of making a tiling game as open as it possibly can be,
Mhm.
which has the problem of AP. Then it that could also be a disaster. When you make a game really open in terms of scope.
Mhm.
Um, that can fall apart very quickly because it can't sustain itself under the limited number of rules mechanisms you put in place can't sustain that level of openness. It's actually like it's a well designed game from that perspective. Even though it's very simple, I actually think it's quite an achievement to have made it so open and yet still function so nicely. So I think you're right that people who really love this type of game actually will probably revel in its scope, or its potential scope, um, of optimization. But and people who are just don't who are very super casual and just see a nice fish on a box and are like, cool tile laying, yeah, that's great, and smash through it, they also will probably enjoy it. People like me in the middle who want to optimize. I mean, Michael would hate this.
Maybe
Michael's
he might be really good
Michael. He
at
loves.
it and just, you know,
He would, but he'd probably be frustrated by how long it was taking him to come up with it. Or maybe he
or
wouldn't.
maybe
I
he'd
don't
be
know.
frustrated by everyone else because, you know, I think maybe one of the red flags here as well is when you put 60 minutes on the box. Already, I'm like, you know, I don't want a range either. What I want is X per player. Give me X per player, or I'm not taking you seriously. For a start.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. At 4 players, 60 minutes means that everyone's only taking 15 minutes to lay all their tiles. Like, so let's say lay approximately 16 tiles. I just
Less than a minute
I
per
just don't see that
turn.
happening. I just don't see that happening. But at the same time, I'm well aware that someone could watch this and be like, "We played this in like 45 minutes, easy. What's the matter with you? You guys are stupid." I can completely understand someone thinking we're
Mm.
idiots because this took us 2 hours. Completely could get that.
No, but I mean,
Hopefully
also,
people
like,
would
it's
see the
about the
nuance,
sort of
but
the table vibe, right? Like, because if somebody's really spending their time to optimize, then everyone feels compelled to do so because nobody
yeah,
wants to be like hammering out their turns really, really quickly. And then you get to the end of the game and the person who spent as long as the rest of the table on their turns has won by a landslide because they really planned
yeah.
everything out meticulously. You know, that's also not very exciting. So, like, you have to find this sort of social balance, right? And I do think that fundamentally, if the game has scope for that, that's part of the design. You have to be conscious of that as a designer. It's not something, and you know, I do think that's the biggest pitfall a lot of designers is they only play games with people who playtest a lot, people who work in the industry, other designers. You know, they go to playtest meetups with people who functionally playtest games. You know, like as a hobby, and they don't actually ever blind test their game or test their game with just, you know, normal punters, you know? And there's lots of opportunity to do that, but these things come out, you know? And maybe Uwe was just like, well, in this instance, I don't mind this amount of cognitive load. And Albie was like, yes, but we can't put 2 hours on the box.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think ultimately my takeaway from it, my recommendation to everyone would be, if you want a nice simple light polyomino, it's Patchwork. If you want a crunchy polyomino, it's Feast for Odin. And the weight, not the weight, but the cerebral load of Feast for Odin, but only with
The rules overhead of Patchwork.
the rules overhead of Patchwork, and it just melts in the middle in a not very satisfying way.
That's a pity to hear, but I understand exactly what you're saying. Presentation's nice though; it looks really pretty.
Yeah, it is, and we probably will play it again at some point. I'll play it as a 2 player with Deborah at some point and see how that works.
Yeah, if you played it 2 players, let me know if it's just like not as good as Patchwork or better. I'd be
I
interested to know.
suspect we'd rather play Patchwork, but I'll give it a go.
Well, from koi ponds to the open ocean, we're going into our big final game here. This is, it might not be the open ocean. I think it's actually the Mediterranean Sea, but, you know, give me my segues here. It depends. It's made by Greeks, so I assume it's the Mediterranean, but I don't know that as an actual fact. There's no sharks in the Mediterranean, are there? Then maybe there are.
There'll be sharks.
There'll be
There'll be
some kind of
sharks.
shark.
I don't know if there's particularly dangerous sharks. Do you mean the Aegean Sea though? If you're talking about the
Do I mean the Aegean
Wait,
Sea? Is that what I mean?
well, I think Asian is just a subpart. Well, Asian is just a part of the med actually, isn't it? Really.
Yes, that definitely sounds right.
So
Yeah. Yep, for sure. All right,
I'll Google are there sharks while you work away.
this is a heavy Euro worker placement game from the designer of Meeple Circus. It's designed by Cedric Millet, who designed Meeple Circus, Kyoto no Neko, and the Behind series. The artists are Oscar Manuel, who did Thesaurus. In fact, his whole bio on BGG is an artist who worked on Thesaurus. And I was like, give us a bit more detail than that, but they refuse. And Jan Valiani, who is a Parisian comic book artist who worked on Expeditions, Ghost Adventures, and many more, as well as Thesaurus. It's published by Super Meeple, and the count is 1 to 4 players. It says 45 to 180 minutes. I'd like to meet the people playing this in 45 minutes, but I think, if you're 4 players, 3 to 4 hours. You're pushing 3 if you've all played before, but there's a lot of scope for sort of cognitive load here. Now, maybe it's not as heavy as all that, but we'll get into it. It's 3.75 on BGG. It's for reference, Brass Birmingham is 3.87 and Ark Nova is 3.79, but they both have cards, and this doesn't really have cards. I played it twice. I played it twice at 4 players. And thematically in the game, you're running a shipwreck salvage recovery company in AC or possibly ocean. You will train your staff, develop technologies, all in which to go on dives to recover shipwrecked salvage to sell to a museum. Mechanically, this is a worker placement game with a strong resource management element. There's only one resource. We'll get into it. It's money. Money is the only resource. This uses my favorite form of worker placement, which is the age-old system established in Bus. It's everybody takes turn placing a worker, and then once everyone's done placing workers, we go through the action spaces and resolve them in the order you put your workers in. It's my favorite. I love that. So, obviously big in Bus. It was also used in Empire's Age of Discovery, which is an underrated game that I can no longer recommend because it's horribly colonial. Hopefully, though, they did retheme it as a space game, but it was rubbish. Maybe they'll do it again at some point. Wait a bit.
It's okay to colonize space.
It's okay to colonize alien. Yeah, xenophobia is okay when it's xenophobic about unreal things, but the minute it's reality, it's not okay. But I don't know. The space version was not good either. So also Argent the Consortium, which uses this system and also lets you blow each other up, send each other to hospital, which is fun. And I put Luthier-ish because it's kind of got that. Luthier has that system where we're all placing workers and then we resolve the spaces after. But there's not a set order to the resolution, and also it's the blind sort of power mechanism. So maybe a similar kind of vibe, but it's not really the same. Another one popped into my head while I was thinking about on the podcast earlier, and I forgot. Maybe it'll come back to me. But this is my absolute favorite way of doing worker placement. And so the structure of the game is it's 3 years of running your company, and each year is like 6 phases, but it's really a main planning phase, and then, well, you get some investment, or maybe I'll talk about that later, but you get an investment phase, and then you get a main planning phase, which is hugely consequential, and then 3 rounds of this worker placement stuff, and then followed by an end of phase cleanup and resolution. And each one of these worker placement phases is everyone places out all the workers, trigger all the action spots, collect all the workers back, repeat. And that's where the bulk of the gameplay takes place. So you're functionally doing the worker placement stuff 9 times over the course of the game. But there are 10 spaces that you'll be resolving, and that's all quite familiar, I guess. What we're going to be doing is managing a complex logistic chain, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the sort of, I guess, the chief novelty that really makes this seem strange is the planning phase. Because what you've got your funding. And you'll get your funding in the investment phase, and that is, in the beginning of the game, that's all your money. It just comes into you at the first investment phase of the game. In later years, that initial investment becomes less and less, and you'll only have money from your actual work that you're doing in the action phase, which is to say recovering and selling salvage. But in that planning phase, following the investment phase, you take all of your money and you must distribute it across, I'm going to say 6 departments, but it could be fewer.
So 5 or 7.
5 or 7, exactly right. Following the Chris methodology, I'm going to tell you it's not going to be 6. It is 5. There we go. 5 departments. Well, and technically there are 4 departments and a slush fund. So, but each of these departments is tied into one of the action spaces on the board. And so what you're doing is you're committing your funding for the year, and then throughout the course of the 3 action resolution phases, you must pay for everything you're doing in each action from the appropriate fund. And so if later on you go to that fund to pay for an action and you can't afford it, you must make a transfer. A transfer means moving money from one or more other departments, not the slush fund, to the department you need the money in, and paying for each department you're transferring out of a transfer fee equal to the year number. And so you don't want to be doing that because money is tight, especially in the mid game. Money is so tight. And so you've got to plan efficiently. And that is just really weird and unique. It's like, it's a bit like action programming because you're sort of committed to like, where are my big actions going to be? Where am I going to spend my money? But then it's not really action programming because ultimately you can just not take those actions. Like later on, if you've got no money in R&D at all, you go, well, I'm just not going to do those actions. But then that might really hamstring your strategy. The other thing you can do is do really crummy actions that get you some money, because any money you make in the action phases is then immediately assigned to a department, but at your discretion. You can also put it in the slush fund. You just can't ever transfer money out of the slush fund. What's that for? More on that later. So the actual action phase itself is just everyone places workers. I think you start with like 3 workers. It's 2 regular ones and your boss. And then it's also got the thing that Chris likes where each action space has a bonus that you can access if you are the boss worker or if you're trained. And so if you ever send your worker to a space with the boss will train that worker and they get a little hat. And then that says, I get the bonus in this space now. And each worker can only want to have 1 hat, but the boss counts as a trained worker in every space because that's why they're the boss. They're good at everything. Obviously, that's how life works.
That's how promotion works.
Exactly. But the hats are super tight as well because there's only 3 per space. So someone's not getting a hat in a 4-player game and they go down. So it's always like one not enough hats, which sucks. But the other thing it does is it forces you to put 2 workers in the same space, which is often not great. You don't really want to be doing that. You want to probably have a spread. So that's interesting dynamic. But what we're really doing here is managing this complex logistics chain of getting salvage. And that is the 6th action space. At the 6th action space, you get in one of your Kodiaks, which is like a dinghy, and you set out for the open ocean. And then you get to the open ocean where you can go to these dive sites, right? To recover the salvage. But here's the thing, right? You will need to have first off, you'll need to invent the equipment. So you'll need to create so there are technologies in a marketplace. That's action number 2. You can invent the technologies. When you go there, you can invent the technologies or you can buy the equipment, but you can't buy the equipment if you haven't invented the technologies. And maybe other people invented it, but then you have to buy it from them and they get some of the money, and money's really tight. So you don't want to do that. You want to invent them because they have points on them as well. But also there's not enough tech for everyone. And if it sells out, it's just gone. And then you can't access that stuff either. It's crazy. So like first you got to invent the tech. Then once the tech's invented, you have to buy the equipment from the tech. Now you can, for a premium, buy the equipment as a prototype when you invent the tech, but it's so expensive. So maybe you just send 2 workers there. And then you can also train them up in tech, and that's good. But now you don't have enough workers to go out and do the other jobs later on. Oh, what a pain. Such a pain in the ass. Anyway, invent the tech, buy the equipment. Then you need to go to action space number 3, where you're going to find the maps. All right, you need the maps to find the dive sites. You can't even go. You're just not allowed to go to the dive sites if you don't have the maps, because it doesn't matter. You just get there and you wouldn't know what to look for anyway. So literally you need to have the maps. So you have to go to action space 3 to buy the maps. You can then go to action space 4, but you don't ever need to worry about that till the late game. Don't worry about that. Then you go to action space 5, where you actually control the people at sea, but in the early game, you won't have anyone there. So don't worry about that either. Action space 6, send a dinghy out, a Kodiak out. You can go to the bay where you might be able to make a little bit of money doing some mini games, or you can set sail for the open ocean. Now, when you set sail, you have to load up all that equipment on the boat. Okay, so once it's out in the sea, you can't change its equipment. So you need to know that it's got all the equipment it needs to go to the dive site to recover the salvage. Okay, but the good news is you have a private helicopter. The bad news is it can't bring any new equipment to the Kodiak. It's not allowed because it's being prioritized the shipment of treasure back from the Kodiak to the mainland. All right, and that's action space number 8. That's the museum. The private helicopter ships that treasure back in when you've got it to the company. And then we can go to action space number 8 and sell the, I say sell, I've missed an action spot, but don't worry about it. I'll talk about it later. To the museum. Okay, at the museum, you can take 2 actions. You can sponsor an exhibit to open it, or you can sell the treasure to the exhibit for points and money. This is the main way of getting money. It's also the main way of getting points. However, if you're in the top of the action spots and you have to open an exhibit by sponsoring it, that's your action. And then like if you've only got 3 spots in the exhibit for treasure and everybody else takes that before you get to your worker again, then the exhibit's full and now you have to sponsor another exhibit and you never even got to drop off your treasure. You can sell it to the warehouse and then you'll still get the money, but you won't get any points, and that sucks. And then action space number 9 is just like buy advertising. It's basically just buy points. And then the final action space is bid on turn order. And this is where the slush fund comes in, because everyone's going to blind bid on the turn order for the next round, but you're only allowed to use the money from your slush fund. There's also points involved with being first player.
Wait, can I ask, when you sponsor a museum exhibit, is there any other benefit to doing that?
Yes, when the exhibit is completely full, it closes and you get bonus points if you sponsored it.
Okay, so if you sponsor and then everyone else, all the other players take all the spots, that's still good. It's just not what you wanted.
It's okay. It's really about, because the problem is the spots in there might also have quite distinct values. There's like a 2, a 5, and then another 2. So really what you want is to be like first and third, so you can open it, and then someone takes the 2, and then you get the 5. But it never happens. It's never going to happen. And if they see that you're going to get the 5, they're just not going to buy the 2, and they'll just open their own exhibit or sell it to the warehouse. And it's just like, God damn it. So what I'm trying to express here is that this is a game of super, super tight timing. There were a number of points in both of my plays of this game where I'm like, if somebody takes that action spot, I'm straight screwed. I'm so screwed. Nothing goes well. It's a big part of it is the equipment. Like when you get the treasure map, you can look at the dive token. So you actually draw 3 dive sites from a stack and you pick one and put it face down into the position. And only the people with the treasure map can look at it. Like I said, only the people with the treasure map can even go there. In fact, there are numbered spaces adjacent to the dive sites, and that's how you move around the open ocean. And you can't even go into those numbered spaces unless you have a matching map. You're just not allowed. So you just have to sit in the middle of the open ocean and fish, and it's rubbish. So the dive sites themselves are a series of columns, and each column has some treasure in it, but you've got to get past sharks. You've got to get depth. You might have to dig through dirt, which means you're going to need harpoons to get past the sharks. You're going to need diving masks to get deeper underwater. You might need drills to get into the treasure. Some of the treasure's hidden, and then you need metal detectors and sonars to find it. So you have to line up all of this equipment on the Kodak before you even go out. I don't know if it's a Kodak or a Zodiac. I think I'd be changing. I might be on Zodiac because of Orloj.
I think it's a Zodiac.
Is it a Zodiac? Okay, cool.
So I remember in our pre-Essen video, I couldn't remember the name of them, and I was saying it's some fancy brand name. I think it was Zodiac we found.
Let's say it's Zodiac, although it could be... No, Kodak's a bear. I'm sure it's the Zodiac. Anyway, so later on then, like what you don't want to do either is spend your on action space 5. Your Zodiac can move and dive in either order. Moving is quite laborious, and what you probably don't want to do is move back to port. The only reason to do that would be to change the equipment, but you can go to action space number 4, and then you can hire a biplane to fly out to the Zodiac and drop off more equipment. You can also change workers, because a big dumbass move you could have made is send your boss out on the Zodiac in turn 1, and now he can't train anyone ever. Or they can't train anyone. I don't know who they are. But they can't train anyone because they're stuck in the open ocean for round after round. Okay, so there's it's like such tight timing consideration. But maybe you did send them because you needed the bonus at the time. From that space, and now you're like, how do I recover them? Okay, I get this other person, I put them in the biplane, I fly them out to the Zodiac, and then I can change them and also the equipment. But then I need to make sure I have the equipment first, and oh no, it's not even been invented. And the thing is as well, there's like sort of roughly 5 kinds of equipment that you need for these explorations. But if you've got like the treasure map for the really deep treasure, like it's really deep underwater, you're like, okay, I need the best diving mask in the game. There's no guarantee that comes out of the deck because it's just a big deck of cards with way more cards than there are slots. I think like a third of the equipment comes out, maybe even less than that. Maybe only a quarter of the available equipment actually appears in the game. So one of the big actions you can do is send one of your people to the science space to just do research. And functionally, all this does is it means they stand on top of the deck. And in the cleanup phase, when the science cards refresh, the technology cards refresh, you get to hunt for one in the deck and specifically put it out. So you can set that up, but it costs you a whole action. Anyway, it's super, super, super tight. Like I said, it's this complex logistics chain you're managing these finances, and it's constantly tight. There was like so many times where everything could fall apart if someone just blocked me in one spot. And I was like, oh my God, if I don't get that, and how do I prioritize? Like, what am I going into first? And then I bid on first player just to make sure I get in where I need to go. And then I have a brain fart and go somewhere else because I'm like, that's also really important. And then I'm like, oh no, tearing my hair out. And then I go to the technologies because I'm like, I really need to poach this one card I need. And there's like 3 people in front of me. And I'm like, you better be inventing and buying. Because if somebody stands on that deck to get the card they want, I can't go there and I'm screwed. Like, that's this whole game. Like, and so it's super duper tight, and it's really and then the other thing is if they have the same map as you, they can just get to the dive site before you and steal all the good treasure, and that's rubbish. But you can buy all the maps. It's really expensive, but you could buy all the maps of the same number if they come out while you're there, and then only you can ever go to that dive site, and you can be quite leisurely about it. But maybe that's not really a good thing because you spent all your money on one dive site. Now you can't go anywhere else.
I think hearing you talk about it, you're very excited. You're very animated. You're very. I think that's the way you're talking about the game is probably the best, the most valuable review to our listeners and viewers than even in the words you're saying. Like, you seem really excited by it, which is great. Like, it's very, like, your behavior makes me want to play it, which is wonderful to hear and see.
I mean, I think
I haven't played it, unfortunately, even though it was in my top 3 most anticipated games. I've barely been home since Essen. And the thing I was most excited about was the money allocation, which you've said does feel unique. So that's wonderful to hear, and I'm so eager to get it to the table.
Yeah, so I think the novelty of the planning step, hugely consequential, really important. I think the Essen promo was actually just player screens to conceal the money planning step. I'm not sure if it's really that competitive. I've had sort of mixed responses to people actually using those.
Is it meant to be secret in the rules? I can't remember.
I don't know if it explicitly calls it out. Now, they don't provide screens in the actual retail version of the game. It's an Essen promo thing. So I guess the other thing is, like, I don't know how much information you could really gather from how people are allocating funding. The other thing you need to do is assign funding to pay your staff salaries. Oh God, salaries. Yes, you have to pay your workers every year. Not every year, even. You have to pay them every action phase, which means you have to pay them 3 times a year. So you need to make sure you have money for that. And you'll often be flying by the seat of your pants going, if I don't get a treasure and sell it this round, I'm not going to be able to pay my staff, which means you lose victory. You can buy more workers.
How stressed you are by every mechanism you talk about.
This entire game is stressful, okay? Like, I love it, but also this is a really stressful game. Like, it's super stressful, and it's a lot of first come, first served. I do think if you like Bus, if you liked Empire's Age of Discovery, if you like Brass Birmingham, which is also about managing complex logistics chains with annoying restrictions and caring about what other people do, I think you'll like this a lot. It doesn't feel quite as tight as Brass, for sure. And the main reason for that is the one thing I noticed, especially in our second play, where I was playing with largely the same group, one new player, 3 of the same players, is that by the sort of second action phase of year 3, so there's 3 action phases, we'd kind of exhausted all the points, opportunities, and all the opportunities that were left were kind of largely the same. And it felt a little bit like we had 4 or 5 actions too many. People were just buying maps, not even for the dive site access, but only because getting sets of maps is worth points. A lot of people just went to the clams, which is a bum action you can do if you really need money. And the other thing is you have to pay your workers. And so if you also are not allowed to not take actions, which means that, for example, if you go down in tech and the only action that is left to you in tech is buy something and you have no money, you must transfer money to tech in order to buy something. You're not allowed to just pass an action. So that can really doubly screw you. So if you're really unsure about it, you have to send your person to clams where they're going to get $2. Except by the end of the game, it's worth a point. And so there were, by the final action phase of the final round, like everyone was just clamming because we were we'd filled the entire museum with treasure. Treasure on your player board is worth 2 points in the end game and 1 point in the warehouse. The only reason to sell it to the warehouse at this stage, because you'd lose a point, would be to get the money, but 10 money is worth a point at the end of the game, and you get less than 10 for a treasure. It depends on how rare it is. Like the rubbish ones are 3, and I think the top one is 9. Now, if you send an experienced worker, you could get up to 11, which is a net gain of $1. But realistically, if you can't turn the $10 into something more efficient, like buying points at the advertising, which by this stage was 10 for 1, so it's not actually any different to the end game. And all those spaces filled up. It might actually not be 10 for 1. It might have been 10 for 2 or something, but those spaces filled up really quickly. There's only like 3 of them. And so we were sitting there thinking, like, why does this feel like there's a few too many actions and everything we're doing is like just getting us 1 or 2 more points? And so that would be my one big criticism of it, is that it does feel like it's got those actions. If you manically fill up the museum, right? And I don't see why you wouldn't be trying to push the museum. It's the main way to get money. So part of me wishes like maybe the money and the points weren't both tied into the same system that was so limited there, because then you can, then you could maybe face a dilemma where you're like, do I sell the treasure for points in the museum, or maybe to the market where I'm going to get money to fund my company, but I get fewer points or no points. However, upon consideration, we decided that it was probably something to do with the mercenaries mode, which I haven't tried, but I'm now going to talk about. So the mercenaries is like an advanced mode, which adds a new kind of worker. It also trips up the biplanes. Now there's a mercenary plane. But functionally, all this does is add an additional worker that you can hire. So there are more workers you can recruit, and you have to balance it. It's not like Agricola, where just getting a worker now is better. In this, and to be fair, in Agricola, you have to feed them, I know, but in a lot of worker placement games where you can get more workers, it's always the best thing to do. Here, because you have to pay their salaries and money is so tight, if you hire a worker straight up, it can be a bit of a challenge. Now, to be fair, I've seen it work both ways. I've seen people who didn't buy any workers be successful and people who did be successful. So take that with a pinch of salt. But you can unlock up to 3 additional workers for your company, but now you can also get the mercenary. And all the mercenary does is sabotage other players. It's got unique placement spots in each action, and in each spot it can do something to upset the other players. I mean, the stuff it can do is, I went through them all and I forgot most of them, but I remember one of the things it can do is just blow up a shipwreck. So you just pick one of the dive sites, remove it from the game. Whoever had the maps there, don't matter. It's done. So like, this is probably why in a really sort of like a really focused group who are really driving for points in the core game can actually basically exhaust the points opportunities like a round before or a phase before the end of the game. The mercenaries probably really slow down that progress, and suddenly you need all those actions just to get some points. So I haven't tried the mercenaries mode. It looks really mean in a game that's already really tight and stressful. So I don't know if I'd like it or not, but I'll try it.
Yeah, I suspect I wouldn't like that.
I think it's probably also about like sort of going, who's winning.
I think I'd have to get this game to the table a bunch of times before I was willing to try that.
Yeah, well, I've had two solid plays under my belt. I'm willing to roll out the mercenaries and see how it goes. But I am conscious that it might, if this feels much better paced, then it strikes me that maybe this was designed to work this way. But I don't know. It might also be the case that we had a bunch of easy dive sites, and that's why we sort of exhausted the museum so quickly. But I think that, because like, the thing is as well, like functionally, the museum has a lot of spaces that tick down at player count. So it's not like, there would have been as many spaces at 3, and it's just because we're 4 players. There are spaces that only unlock when you're at 4. And, I might be tempted to say at 3 players, just play with the 4-player spaces so that there's a bit more scope for people to do some selling. But the thing is as well, like because you draft, when you get a map, you draw 3 of the dive sites and pick the one you want to be there. And that's the advantage of getting the first map. So if you're the first one to get dive site 2, you pick it. And then everyone else who gets dive site 2 can just visit it, and they don't know it's there. But they can look at what you chose in secret. But so they can plan for it. But they didn't get to pick it. So if it needs some equipment that you've got, you're going to be first in there with first dibs on the stuff there. But yeah, like, so I think we saw so like with the drafting, people are always going to go for more or less for the easy ones early doors, and then maybe in the later game they're going to go for the harder dive sites with the more lucrative columns. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked the game. I definitely happily play it again. I'd like to try the Mercenaries mode. I don't know if the game offers enough heuristics to really know who to pick on, or whether investing your money in that would ever feel worthwhile, because surely you want to be building your own company rather than just spending money to sabotage an opponent. But I don't know. I'd have to try it. It's obviously in there for a reason. There's enough extra components that makes me think, okay, this is, a thing. There's some wooden pieces in there for use with the mercenary modes. There's an extra board and some cards and things. So I'll go to try. I'll see how it is. But, the base game is still really good. I'm really happy with the base game.
Yeah, it's really nice to see how enthusiastic you are about it. That's really nice. It's good. That makes me very excited to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, just plan your money carefully. If you're not
going to
if you're not going to set aside enough for salaries at the start of the year, then make sure that you have a plan to make some money.
I was going to play. I think we were going to play Orloj when Rob and his partner came over in the new year. Maybe I'll jump this to the top of the list, get this in first, and I'll use that advice you've given me to win.
Tell Rob that the best thing to do is invest in the second Zodiac first.
Rob's partner, who you've not played a game with, is a savant at games. She doesn't even play that many, but she just gets them. She gets very complex games very quickly.
Great. Well, now you know who to bomb when you introduce the mercenaries.
Yep. So she's the one I need to sabotage, not Rob.
Exactly right.
Well, Rob will do his usual thing of either winning or coming dead last. I can't control that. That's for him.
Yeah, he averages out to be a very middling player.
Yeah.
Just with a lot of outliers. Great. Well, yeah, so Thesauros is definitely the more interesting design to come out of the ones I've played from Essen so far. It certainly feels the most, of the Euro offerings, it feels the most interactive, the most sort of unique. It's definitely the most tight and stressful. So if you wanted a game that feels like it's giving you a lot of positive feedback, Covenant or Orloj are going to be more in your wheelhouse because everything you do in that feels useful. Whereas this is just stressing about how you don't have enough of anything, and prioritizing is impossible because you need to do everything and everyone's going to take it away from you. So if that's the kind of Euro you like, if you're into your Lacerda type stuff, I'm sure you'll find a lot to like here. Albeit this is very interactive with lots of blocking.
I haven't played it, but I can understand the comparison just from having read the rulebook. Yeah, Get it.
Yeah, the rulebook's quite a lot, but it's actually not. It could have been much simpler. I think a good rules video for this would go a long way to helping people into it, because it's actually not that bad once you sort of explain the spaces going around in order. If you can explain the main thing you're trying to do is get into these dive sites. There's a couple of things that are like sort of a little tricky to get your head around, like the dive sites trigger before the docks, which means in the first action phase of the game, you'll never have anyone triggering in Actions 5 because there won't be any boats that have set sail yet. But honestly, people tend not to go to the open ocean in the first round anyway because they just don't have any equipment.
Yeah, makes sense.
But so once you've got your mind around that logistics chain, if that's laid out for you, it's really not too bad to pick up and learn, you know. And some of the iconography. Just here's my other tip for you. Note that the Wi-Fi signals on the dive tiles, those are the sonars, and they have colors. They are actually treasure chests. They're just treasure chests that need to be found with sonars. And they do have the colors that match the treasure chests, which are, by the way, awful. Like the black one is fine. The bronze and the gold look almost identical, especially on the Wi-Fi's, the sonar things. People at home, you will know what I'm talking about if you've played this, and if you don't, this will sound like utter nonsense. Yeah, I think that's it. So, Thesauros, anyway, we're going to try and get it to game. We'll come back in Quickplays and see how the mercenaries thing went on. I'll find out from Chris if he gets to play it, what he thinks of it, if he's found the same stuff that we've discovered. But in the meantime, this has been our Essen special. We'll be back for more of the podcast. So keep your eyes on our subscriptions wherever you choose to listen to this. If you're on Spotify, I think you can follow it. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe. Or wherever you choose to find your podcasts. We'll be back at some point. So make sure you keep a lookout for us. But otherwise, I'm going to say thanks to Chris for joining me and covering these games for our special episode.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you, everybody. Also, engagement, comment. YouTube loves engagement.
Do you disagree? Do you disagree?
Oh, and if you enjoyed this video, click another one of Ray Stay Plays video now if you're on YouTube, or click another episode of the podcast for Spotify, because that shows the platform that we're worth engaging with, because you went straight to the video. That's a tip, Mike.
And this just goes to show that I have no idea what I'm doing after 10 years of doing it.
but thank you for having me.
Thanks to everyone who listened and watched, and thanks so much to the patrons who support the show. We really couldn't get here without you, so we really, really appreciate you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.